Okay, we are live. Not bad.
Live on the APG.
Not bad. About
only 6 minutes.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Oh,
Good.
Is that
Dan?
me or you guys?
That was you?
I'm here.
That was you.
That was me. Uh-oh. All right. I'll be right back. Let me go pay the $5.95.
As you can see, Dana is on location in his mobile studio in Mobile. His mobile studio. Hello, Mike Kuipers, Nico, Roger, Rager, excuse me. James. Oh, I need to get these different glasses.
Well, your rose tinted ones.
No, he had the cheap internet option, Neville, free, and now he's gonna. It's only $5.90 something for the upgraded speed.
Yeah, $5.95.
I wonder what that's going to do to your signal.
I hope.
My shirt here is George Nolly's wonderful podcast, Ready for Takeoff.
Very nice.
All right, let's see. Is that any better? I'm hoping it's better.
It'll probably take a little bit of time to sort itself out.
Shake.
I today have a Royal Air Force Ramble. Whoa.
Yay.
Or as people insist on calling it, a rondelle.
Roundel.
Sounds like a pop group, doesn't it? The Rondells.
All right, give me one pop back in, see if that helps.
Okay. I hope that means what we think it means.
That's what she said.
Yes. Speaking of that, let me see if I have this set up properly. Could you hear that?
No.
Oh, yeah. Why?
All right, there we go. See if that helps. Turn down the bandwidth a little bit. All right.
Oh, I know what I need to do. You kids just talk amongst yourselves while Captain Jeff does one little thing that he forgot about. That is channel 11 and 12.
I'm wearing my Harley Davidson shirt. See?
No, you're frozen. Oh, there, I see it now.
Hopefully that's better. Get my $6 worth.
Well, I hate to say this, but it was better before you upgraded. Seriously.
That's dreadful.
Oi.
I gotta play something here.
I wonder if anybody.
Okay, and you can't hear that?
Nope.
Nope.
You didn't hear the doctor the APG
syndrome?
syndrome?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, it's playing.
No, it's not.
No, I know. I'm thinking. I'm talking out loud. Thinking out loud.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Okay, 11, 12. And what would this be? This would be channel 1, 2. And to get it to you, we would have to go to XR18. But you hear me okay, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes. Loud and clear.
Okay. Let me try something else. XR18 on. Okay, now I'm going to try it again. Doctor, oh, now I hear it.
Now I can hear it.
Now I hear it twice.
Now I hear it too.
Yeah, but I have some latency going on there for some reason. Oh, I know why. Okay, let me bring this down. And
Doctor, give me the news. I got a bad case of
APG syndrome.
no pills gonna cure me.
How does that sound?
Good to me.
Good.
Good to me.
Okay, great. So the way I was monitoring everything, I was getting it from two different sources, and there was like a couple of millisecond difference in the way they were playing, and it sounded horrible. Horrible. All right. Here we go.
Paying $269. MPBS download is
record.
0.96 and upload is 1.86.
Yeah, that should be okay. Let's see. I guess do you have your recorder going, Dana?
I do now.
Okay.
It's up and running.
Let me start mine.
Likewise.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. 325.
Hello. Wow, 325.
These wonderful things that we got from Neville. So many things we get from Neville. He's such a wonderful person.
Yeah, I've caught. He gave me a cold last.
And then women
days ago.
get a lot of things from him too.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm assuming that, Dana, you'll just be doing a clap because I'm sure you don't have your...
I will. I'm ready.
The clap.
Ready to roll.
Did he get that from Neville?
I've got the clap.
He may have gotten the clap from Neville. Okay. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Seriously? Did you do that on purpose, Dana?
What?
Did you clap when everybody else did?
I absolutely did.
Wow. So you're like about 2 to 3 seconds behind us.
Bit of latency in there.
A lot of latency.
Oh, no.
So we'll understand when we talk to Dana and then he pauses for a moment. It's not because he's thinking about his response. It's because he is just now hearing the question.
I love it.
All right. You want me to try to go to my hotspot and see if that works better?
No, we can
do that.
We can try this, see how it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the hotspot, I mean, you get full signal.
Yeah. I know. Sometimes I get this like hugely great numbers from the hotel Wi-Fi, and then it just doesn't work. I don't understand. But yeah, let's give this a shot. Okay, so we're recording. I believe I have everything set up the way it should be. Hang on, let me just do one more thing here.
How's that? Any better?
Always go around if it don't look right.
Okay, that looks like it's recording over here, although it doesn't look like much. Okay.
All right, is that any better?
All right, so I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, clap. Yeah.
Were we doing another clap? Or?
I was just doing it just to see how his latency was going.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, I'm on my hotspot now.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is a little bit better.
All right, cool. I'll call down the hotel front desk when we have
Get your money back
and get my money back.
Yeah, I do that all the time. I I pay for the upgraded and then it just is crap, and so I say, and they go, no problem, you don't have to pay for it. Okay, let me get my little script out here, and then let me get to the proper page for the soundboard. And make sure that
Neville.
What?
How long did it take to get to the Ron Jeremy comments?
Not long.
Not long.
We haven't even started the show, and he's already at it.
WAPG.
Wow. That's loud.
Yeah, it was really loud for me too. How do I turn that down?
I feel very fortunate. I have actually seen the APG studios. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, not much, huh?
APG. It's the airline pilot guy.
How's that volume for these?
That was better.
Okay.
That's a little loud. Can't hear anything. That's better.
Okay. That's close enough, I think. Don't start with your spoliate and spoliation there in the chat room.
Hey,
Okay.
Liz, I'm coming to see you next week.
Coming to see you, baby.
Not going to see you, though, Liz. I'm going to see Toronto for a few minutes.
Oh, you're not going to see her?
Nah,
Not laying over?
not laying over.
Gotcha.
Just going up there, which I haven't been there in a long time.
It's a wonderful place, especially this time of year.
WAPG.
Wish I was staying.
Oh, no. Is he frozen?
Am I frozen?
No.
Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's frozen.
All of a sudden, he sent me a
Internet down here.
message. Yeah, internet down here. I went, huh?
Huh? Oops.
That always happens. Like right before we're ready to start the recording, Nick's internet just
Sorry,
disappears.
Liz. Of course. Perfect. Perfect timing. While he's doing that, let me call while he's resetting, I'm going to call downstairs and tell him it stunk. I'll be right back.
It's a normal show, isn't it? How to disappoint Dana, get a layover? It's always Nick. Well, no, it's not always Nick, but the last few times this has happened, right? Everything's great, and then we are ready to start the show, and then he disappears, and he says his internet is...
in room 1415. I just paid for that upgraded internet, and it's
all right, so let me turn these down here.
Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's no better. The speed is terrible.
Stand by for news.
We have success. Now we see Nick back.
Yeah, we're on the news section now. You missed a lot.
Oh, wow. Wow. I can leave. I can go get food now. Bye-bye.
APG.
I mean,
It's
I
too
quite
loud.
literally just woke up.
Everything's too loud. Why is everything so loud?
You're a loudmouth.
Oh, here's something for you.
Shut up, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff, shut up. Shut up, Jeff.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team.
Shut up, Jeff.
I was just reading the messages. Shut up, Jeff. Hey, Captain Jeff.
Yes,
I can now say, shut up, Jeff.
that's
Because
right.
I'm now a captain, too.
You could say it before. You don't have to be a captain. There are a lot of people that say that to me. They're not captains.
I'm just playing with you. What a week. I can't wait to tell everybody about what happened this week. Boy, it's first world problems, but let me tell you, it's been crazy.
We can't wait to hear it.
Oh my God. My head is spinning. So
Okay. So Steph is letting us know that she's in some undisclosed location, which we're not going to reveal. And she is watching, but she can't seem to watch and chat at the same time. So, hi, Steph. Hope you're having a great time in Timbuktu. By the way, I was looking at something. Really, I was looking at something, and it was, I think, the Aviation Herald. And I'm, kind of an idiot, I think.
No.
Which most people probably could agree with. And it was some kind of an incident / accident and it said it was in Timbuktu or something like that. Is that where they got the? Is that where we got the? Is that Timbuktu? Is that where we get that?
Get what from? I don't know. I've only just rejoined.
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering if this place that this accident occurred is actually where we get that. I just thought somebody made up the word Timbuktu.
No, Timbuktu is a real place.
Oh,
Is it?
Yeah, definitely.
well, it's not spelled the way that I would have spelled it, but apparently I spelled it incorrectly.
Well,
Where
we
is
spelled
it?
we spelled it like Americans would spell it, not like the rest of the world, because
Here it
we
is.
think we
Echo. How do you spell Timbuktu?
you Echo. Who's Echo?
Timbuktu is spelled Timbuktu.
Did you get that?
Well, I would have spelled it that way, but this report from a Jordan Aviation Boeing 737-400 was on approach to Tombouctou's Tombouctou runway 7. So I'm thinking, there really is a Timbuktu, but maybe this is just slightly different.
It
I think
could be, or it could just be a mistype.
Or it could be that we just kind of changed it over time. Maybe it was always Tombouctou, and then they decided that we just kind of anglicized it to Timbuktu.
Well, some places changed the spelling. After all, Bombay is now Mumbai.
Yeah.
So that's quite a bit different spelling.
Is anybody else disturbed by what Nick just did?
What?
Because the damn thing's listening to you all the time, and it listens to you when you do everything: shower,
doesn't.
take a poop, have sex.
Well, I don't often take a poop in this bedroom.
You might do some other things in that bedroom, and it's listening.
And that's actually a bit of urban myth. It doesn't actually. It only listens for keywords, and then when it hears a keyword like echo in
Oh God.
then it will.
Actually, I think that's not really correct.
Whatever you like me to do.
Yeah, quite.
Actually, it's been used in some court cases. They say it has to actively be listening to hear the prompt word. It doesn't react to your query until it hears that Echo or Alexa or whatever you've set up to be your
Siri.
Yeah. Well, it's not going to work with. Anyway, we don't. This is not a tech show. We're not going to talk about it. But apparently, it actually is listening constantly. Just to let you know. All right.
I guess the iPhones and all the other phones are listening all the time too. Because if I say, "Hey, SIRI," yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Technology.
Okay. Yeah. Ain't it grand?
Oh yeah. That's why I
Okay.
don't fly in
So we're
Airbus.
all here, and we're going to start the show.
No, we're not all here.
Well, all here that's going to be here.
That's true.
All right.
Can't forget about Dr. Steph.
Who?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Wait a minute. Make sure I have this little sound clip available.
Where in the world is Carmen San Diego? And we just lost Nick.
Again?
Again.
I have very little patience for stupidity.
I resemble that remark. At least that's the way it felt last couple of days.
The show is
Wow. Wow. See my Jeff?
What are you showing there?
I'm showing you my new case I bought for my microphone so it doesn't break again.
Oh, very nice. Where'd you get that?
$12 on
Let me see. Why am I not seeing you in full screen? Okay.
That's the problem I was having.
Let me show you it again. Show that to me again. Now that I put you, I white boxed you. Not to be racist. And the inside.
Oh.
Looked like I had a nice cutout. Very nice. Was it made specifically for a
Yeah.
microphone?
It's
Nice.
made specifically for this microphone. Even better.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
I ordered it on eBay. I think it was 12, 14
Very cool.
bucks, something like that.
Very cool.
It was well worth the investment because the last one I broke, of course, as you know.
Yeah, I wonder, if they does the person that makes those does the
The company that makes those.
company that makes those, do they like make them custom, like to fit a microphone and then a like a
Yeah.
Zoom H5 recorder? That'd be really nice.
I don't know, but I can tell you this, that there is a lot of room on the top side.
Yeah.
It's a full case. I have at least a half an inch from the top of the case, where the zipper is,
Mhm.
into where the microphone sits. So then there's another about a quarter of an inch on top of it. So you could fit your recorder in there as well. So it's a pretty big case. I can fit all my recording stuff into this case and protect everything that I bring with me on the road. So it's awesome.
Yeah, very nice. I'll have to get more information about the company after the show.
Sure. Well, I mean, we're just talking about stuff now because Nick's not here.
Yeah.
So we're waiting on Nick anyways.
So main man Micah was talking about the unconditional guarantee on the ATR 2100, and you looked into that, Dana, and what did they say?
It's going to cost me more money to send it back and have them look at it versus buying a new one. So it just wasn't worth it. And, if it wasn't covered under warranty, then they charge you for it. And by the time I spent the money to ship it back, ship it to them, and potentially have to pay that, I just bought the new one because it's not that much money. It's what, $50-$60.
Yeah.
So I just said the hell with it. And now I have two, which worked out really well last week.
Yeah, sure did.
Because when I'm at home, it works fine if I'm plugged in
to the XLR.
As long as I'm plugged into the XLR, it overrides that switch anyway. So it worked out fantastic last week. So I'm glad I have the second one now.
Yeah.
Now I'm just going to protect it.
So I don't know why the this thing is not auto switching when people are talking. People have noticed that in the chat room.
Now you guys just seeing me now?
No.
All right, because I had accidentally clicked on you earlier, and all I see is you. It doesn't switch back and forth. I don't know how to get rid of that little white box.
You click it again. Wherever you have the white box, if you click.
Oh.
So basically what that does is it stipulates what you see in your screen in the big part of it.
Right.
And if I do the same thing on my end, it will control not only what I see, but also what the general audience sees. So if I've white boxed somebody, that's what they're going to see too. But normally I don't do that because I forget that I've white boxed somebody and then it's just stuck in that view. But normally it just automatically switches, that hot switching. But
yeah,
apparently that's not working today. I think Nick broke it.
Yes, we can blame Nick.
Chat room, was it working before? When you first came on, or has it been not switching at all today?
Yeah, a little latency here. Yes, Jeff. It was working earlier. I think when you hotboxed me for the case video, maybe that's when it went.
No, it wasn't. I purposely hotboxed you or white boxed you. That sounds better than hotbox. I white boxed you specifically so that I could see the thing in the bigger screen.
Case.
Yeah. So that's not what did it.
I like when you say hotbox.
I know you do. Hey, big guy. Family show.
All right. Nick said sodding internet.
Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
I think he meant something else other than sodding. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a euphemistic.
A euphemism. Wait.
Oh, boy. Well, this is a typical airline pilot guy show, isn't it?
Yes,
gang?
perfect.
But at least it's earlier in the day, so we're wasting your time at an earlier time of the day instead of wasting your time later in the day, especially for those of you who might happen to be watching from the UK or the Europe land.
Hey Ken, just to answer your question, I don't have Jeff hotboxed. He's just not my type, Ken. I hate to tell you. No,
You know what? Thankfully, I mean that's okay with me. I don't want you to hotbox me, baby.
Oh,
Sorry.
I go so many places with that.
I know.
I'm not going to. Though.
Good.
Weather here is building again. It was nice and sunny a
So
little
you're not
earlier
flying today. You're flying tomorrow morning or something.
Tomorrow, yeah. I'll talk about that. All that fun stuff when we start the show here, and maybe Nick's back. Hi, Nick.
Yeah,
Can
I'm
I-
sorry, guys.
I have
I'm
not
having a
hotboxed.
bit of an internet nightmare tonight.
Must be everybody watching Netflix and Hulu over there.
Well, normally I've got exceptionally good signal,
Mhm.
but I had a few power cuts yesterday, and since then it's been extremely flaky. We lost it for most of the night, but I assumed it was better today, so I'm sorry. Are we
Yeah.
actually in the show now, or what?
No, we haven't started yet. We're
Okay.
waiting for you to get it all sorted out.
Well, as far as I know, it's sorted out. I'm just going to
Okay.
do a quick speed check, and I'll get back to you.
All right. So it is the Hangout on Air that is having the issue with the fact that it's not switching when people are talking. Now I could, since you guys are there, I could go ahead and leave and then come back and see if that affects its behavior.
Sure.
I think I can do that. No, wait a minute.
No, you
Okay,
can't.
let me try.
Oh, now it's just Nick and I in his bed.
Yeah, he never gets back. I mean, he's tried this so many times, he never comes back. We have to do the show on our own now.
Oh, that would be actually be an improvement.
Oh, wow. Here he
The
comes.
at least the accuracy would get better.
Are you saying
there you
if I'm not there, the accuracy will improve? Is that what you're saying? I heard it.
We wouldn't say
I
that.
heard you. Actually, you know what? This is better, and it's working. When you guys are speaking, it's switching to your video.
There you go.
Sounds good.
So it was all your fault.
It was. Apparently, I did something that messed it up.
Well, I haven't got good speed, but it should be sufficient for the show. Whether it holds out or not, I don't know.
We're going to find out.
Yep. Good luck.
Danny, would it be difficult to shift your camera just slightly downward so you don't have so much space above your head?
Let's see if we can work that out. I'm in the.
It's an earthquake. There's an earthquake in Mobile.
Oh my God!
Whoa, it's horrible. Are you okay, Dana?
No, that's the top of the zipper. See, I'm trying to avoid there. Hold on. Let's see what I can do. Hold on.
Okay.
Don't look. This is a pain in my. I really wish I could bring the mount, but it's very difficult.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Basically, what I'm seeing in my window is exactly what you all are seeing. And yes, I confirmed that it is now the live switching is working. So maybe everything else will work as well. That's much better, Dana. Thank you. Except for your
The
fingers.
zipper.
Yeah. No, I don't see the zipper.
I see right at the bottom. That's okay.
Ah, that's good enough.
I'm just trying to get myself straight here. You know what? I hold on 1 second. Let me get off my tuchus. Should help out.
This is fascinating.
Come on.
And you're a member of this group. Can you face some unpleasant facts?
No.
Look at this. Let's try this. Oh, that would probably work real good. This needs to stay. Let's see. And I can probably adjust that a whole lot better.
Yay. Now let's
Yay.
back up a little bit.
There you go.
Perfect. All right.
We got it.
We're
Yeah.
coming together. Come together
Good luck,
right
everybody.
now over me.
All right, not bad. We're only 36 minutes late.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
WAPG. It's the airline pilot guy.
All right.
Perfect.
Wasn't something supposed to happen then?
Yeah. What? Weren't you supposed to say something? Or is that me? Dang it.
You
missed
are.
missed the rehearsal.
Somebody is supposed to say something.
This is your first show, Jeff.
Yeah.
You've never
Okay.
done this before.
All right.
Shut up, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff, shut up.
Shut up, Jeff.
WAPG. It's the airline pilot guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 325.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, a view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from the APG headquarters studio in a northern Atlanta suburb. Today's show was recorded on the 24th of May, 2018.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy. It's your ride and it's flying by. With the airline pilot guy.
In today's episode, an Airbus lands with the nose wheel retracted, a business jet slides off the end of a runway, and Monkey Manic Monday at the San Antonio airport. More news, your feedback, and this week's plane tale, the Luftwaffe pilot, and ye old pub. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seatbacks in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 325 is ready for pushback. Hello and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast. And joining me this week from her beautiful lakeside...
Doctor?
Wait a minute.
Where in the world is
Dr. Steph. She's not here with us today, and nobody knows, well, only a handful of people know, where she is in the world, and we miss her. And you know what? It's her birthday today. So we're really...
what a place to spend her birthday in a penitentiary. Oh, damn.
You specifically told us not to mention that on the show.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, boy.
So it's only for a few weeks.
In
Yeah.
a male penitentiary, no less. Poor girl.
All right, let's move on. From his country estate outside of London, professional photographer, former RAF fighter pilot, current captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
Hi there, Jeff. And hi, Captain Dana. Seeing you there in the corner, hiding away. Great to be back on the show. Looking forward to another good one. Dr. Steph's not here. That means we can have fun.
I know it's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah.
And last but not least, from his mobile recording studio in Mobile, Alabama, barbecue master, bourbon connoisseur, motorcycle riding, pontoon boat skipper, and pilot for a major U.S. legacy carrier, Captain Dana.
Hello, everybody. And I think you need to say no longer a pilot. It's now captain. So I'm
Well,
really
you're a
looking
cap.
forward-
You're a pilot too.
Well, that's true. Well, I try to be at least, but I pretend. I at least dress up in my monkey suit and walk around looking like one, I guess. Hey, great to be back on another fantastic episode, 325. Looking forward to another fun afternoon, especially with the debauchery that's going to happen now that Dr. Steph's not here to monitor us. So,
Yes.
looking forward to it.
Okay, again, Dr. Steph, we miss you sorely.
Love you.
We love you, and but we hope you're having a happy birthday. I'm sure you are, and we have a special something for you that will play. Well, what the heck? Should we play it right now? Since we're talking about
go for
Dr.
it.
Steph and her happy birthday.
Go for
Okay.
it, Dr. Steph.
You may
Happy
recognize.
birthday.
You may recognize this voice.
Okay, so before I get to the crux of this little piece, I feel
Does that sound like extremely loud to you?
A
tad,
little
not
bit,
bad.
yeah, a little
Not
bit.
bad.
For me it is. So let me see here. Let me do an adjustment.
Barely into the show, and you have a lot of editing to do already.
Oh yeah, that's standard. Standard. Right. Okay. I think I know what to do here. I can just take this little thing and move it down. Okay, let's try this. Here we go.
Okay, so before I get to the crux of this little piece, I feel I have to offer a bit of a disclaimer. In this world of political correctness, feminism, and the Me Too movement, some of the things said here may just sound wrong. It might even unintentionally offend someone. So please know ahead of time, that's not my objective. And those of you that know me will completely understand. Those of you that don't know me, well, let me tell you a little story that also may be the greatest compliment I've ever received, and one that wasn't intended for me to hear. You see, at one time, I was employed by a social service agency and was given the responsibility of a solo overnight shift in what was then called a girls' home. The 7 or 8 young women who stayed in this home were all between 14 and 18 years old and came from very troubled pasts. They had difficult family backgrounds. Most often, they and their families had criminal records, and most of the girls had spent time, some of them most of their lives, in youth detention centers, foster homes, on the streets, well, or worse. As I said, I worked a solo overnight shift, and in most cases was the only man they'd ever met who was not going to hurt them, or again, worse. One of the things I instituted when I started there is something that I can't believe hadn't been part of the program from the beginning, many years before I arrived. You see, the overnight staff were required to do hourly room checks to make sure these poor girls were okay, asleep in bed, not upset, and not lying awake or crying. I thought that these poor kids had a right, well, not just a right, I thought it was critical to their well-being that I met with them individually when they first arrived in the program and explained to them what was involved with a room check. They needed to know that I would never come into their room, never walk past the threshold of the door, that I might shine a small flashlight in to see if they were okay, but assure them that they were safe and that their space was not ever going to be invaded in the middle of the night. Doesn't it sound awful that no one ever thought of explaining that to them previously? Doesn't it sound even worse that these poor girls needed this kind of reassurance? In any event, we had a new arrival one evening, and I had my usual meeting with her. She was fine with what I had to say, had no questions or concerns, and left the office. She went into the living room where another resident, an old friend of hers, was watching TV. They knew each other from time they spent in the youth detention center together, and so they checked in with each other, not knowing I was within earshot. The new arrival asked the resident, "Hey, what's up with that guy who was just talking with me?" Now, this older resident had an awful life. She'd been a victim of her family, her father, her uncle, her mother's boyfriend, in every awful way imaginable, or maybe unimaginable. But this is what she said to the new arrival. I remember her words exactly, and can still even hear the tone in her voice to this day, as she said, "Oh, that's just Micah. He's like really nice, but he's not creepy." Yeah, maybe it sounds a bit strange just to hear the words, but the feelings she was expressing to the new resident were heartfelt. Thinking about it brings a tear to my eye to this day. So based on that little story, please don't be offended by what I'm going to say here. Remember the words of that former resident, and if for some reason I end up being creepy, please know I'm doing my best not to be. Okay, so onward and upward, let's get to the point. And this point will no doubt be from a male perspective. I can't help it. It just happens to be what I am. Not to say that those with another perspective won't understand or appreciate it, but it's undoubtedly coming from a specific point of view. Now, just as a reminder, remember, I'm not creepy and I have proof. So, let me ask you, have you ever met this amazing person that you just have a natural attraction to? You meet her and immediately you think, she's just great. Depending on your age, you may think, wow, I wish she were my friend, my girlfriend, my wife, my mother, my aunt, my sister. You just find yourself drawn to her. Not in any sort of indecent nor improper way. You just like her and can tell she's special. You meet her and you're under her spell, one she doesn't even know she's casting. Now, today I'm talking about a specific person that we all know, and you probably know who I'm talking about. I remember the very first time I met her. It was June of 2015 at the Smithsonian Institution Air and Space Museum Udvar-Hazy Center at the program that's now called Innovations in Flight. I was standing between the B-29 Enola Gay and the Boeing Dash 8 when along came Captain Jeff, Miami Rick, Fred Sampson, and of course, Dr. Steph. Jeff, who I'd met before, introduced me to everyone, saving Dr. Steph for last. That's when I came under her spell. I remember my first words to her exactly. I said, "Dr. Steph, you're even more beautiful here than you are in person." Yeah, not the best first impression, I suppose, but you know me, I've always been really suave. She didn't know what to make of me. Come to think of it, she probably still doesn't, although I think she now realizes that I'm not creepy. Dr. Steph, however, is an amazing person in so many ways. Yeah, she's beautiful. Sure, she's sweet. Naturally, she's kind, warm, and charming. But she's also a multi-engine instrument-rated commercial pilot. That's part of what brings her to the Airline Pilot Guy podcast. But she's still so much more than that. She's a skydiver, a marathon runner, a swimmer, basically a health and exercise nut. Dr. Steph is a world traveler and has been all over the world to run races, to visit foreign lands. And how many people do you know who've taken a shower at 30,000 feet? No, I don't mean sprayed by a shaken-up can of club soda. I mean takes a shower, soap and hot water at 30,000 or more feet. Dr. Steph is a connoisseur of many things, but particularly beer. And not just any beer. She specializes in India Pale Ales. They're commonly known as IPAs. Yeah, acronyms are not just part of aviation. IPAs are a particular style of beer that was developed by accident in the late 18th century. On top of all that, Dr. Steph is, of course, a doctor. But again, not just any doctor, a physiatrist. She specializes in pain relief. I guess she studied that to enhance the natural effect she has on people. Because if you're lucky enough to have Dr. Steph smile at you, any pain you might have just disappears. I could go on and on about Dr. Steph, and I'm not the only one who could. Captain Jeff once said, and I quote, "Steph is so good at so much, I could spend most of the show talking about her." What can I say? Dr. Steph is amazing in many, many ways, and I'm glad she's my friend. So happy birthday, Dr. Steph. Thanks for not running away screaming when you first met me that first time at the Udvar-Hazy Center. More to the point, thanks for not punching me in the mouth back then, or since for that matter. I hope to see you again at the Udvar-Hazy Center next month at the Airplane Geeks 500 episode Decade of Podcasting celebration. But most of all, Dr. Steph, thanks for your work with APG. And mostly, thanks for allowing me to call you my friend. Happy birthday, Dr. Steph. For the Airline Pilot Guy, here in Portland, Maine, this is your main man, Micah.
Very, very nice, Micah.
Wow. That was
What a lovely
fantastic.
piece. Well done,
He's a
Micah.
wonderful
Lovely.
wordsmith.
Great.
Yeah, and speaks from the heart.
Yes, and we all agree with his sentiment regarding Dr. Steph.
Absolutely.
She's an amazing person.
I've heard this term before, but that gave me goosies. I mean, that was very well done.
Never heard anybody say goosies. I've heard goosebumps.
Goosebumps. Goosies.
Or goose something else people talk.
Well, now you heard it first on the Airline Pilot.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Yes, very, very thoughtful, Micah, and I'm sure that Dr. Steph, if she's listening right now, she'll really appreciate that. So, okay. Let's see here. I guess we should move on because we have a lot to cover in this week's intro. In fact, probably most of the show will be the intro. But let's start off with Captain Nick. Oh, you know what? I just received a message from Dr. Steph, by the way, and she is indeed listening. She says, "Wow, thank you so much," to Micah, with a big grinning emoji. So excellent. So she is listening and watching, and that's cool. Okay, let's start off with Captain Nick. You have been busy, even though you haven't been doing a lot of flying, but you have been busy. And tell us what you have been up to, sir.
Well, I guess the highlight of the week was the meetup at the RF Museum at Hendon. Now that's a fantastic location. Between the wars, the airfield at Hendon used to host all the major air displays in the UK and all the military squadrons, all the latest aircraft, biplanes and the such in those days. It used to aviate there, and it was really to generate and re-energize the public's interest in the Royal Air Force, which was not a very old service. The history has carried on until there's not an airfield there anymore, but they have this. They have put some new exhibits in and upgraded it, and they are, specialized, aiming towards the celebrations for the 100th anniversary of the Royal Air Force. So it's a perfect time to go visit. I hadn't seen it for a while. We managed to get quite a few of our listeners to come along as well. So I think there's a little audio which introduced most of them.
All right, and here we go with that audio.
Hi, everybody. This is the old pilot, and we are underneath Sunderland. Isn't this fantastic? In the RAF Museum at Hendon for the May Museum meetup. And we've got about, 8 or 9 people, some of whom will be able to talk. Others are stuffing their faces with cake. So I'm just going to go around. I'm asking everyone just to introduce themselves and say a quick hello to the APG show.
Hello there. I'm Tim Bailey. It's my first meetup, and very pleased to be here with like-minded people to look at the aircraft today.
Excellent.
I'm Andy. I'm based just near Duxford, and I'm private pilot, and I specialize in flying with my eyes shut.
So you
with all that, I can't bear it really, but there we go.
So you log a lot of night hours then?
Oh yes, my logbook's full of night hours.
Here's a special guest, because this gentleman has a lot to do with one of the exhibits, so we're going to pick his brains when we get there.
Hi, I'm Lofty. I'm an aircraft engineer, ex-Concorde engineering manager.
Concorde?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've worked on it for most of its life and planned most of its life out.
Wow, fantastic. I'm going to have to corner you for a plain tale before long.
Hi, I'm Dave Willis. I've been to a few of these meetups now, and it's my pleasure to chauffeur Lofty to this one, and hoping to meet some new people that are here for the first time and make them feel welcome.
Thanks very much indeed. Can you make me feel welcome?
I'll do my best.
That's very kind.
Hello, my name is Louis Duprieux. I'm from near Wimbledon, but also sometimes from South Africa. So spent winters in South Africa, and it's my second meetup.
Who do you fly when you head off down to South Africa?
Emirates, mostly.
Emirates, go to South Africa now.
Yeah, they fly to South Africa. They fly 380 to Dubai, and then they fly 777 down to South Africa.
Very nice. Slightly long way around, but sounds great.
Hello, I'm Ivor. First time I've ever come here. Slightly disappointed. I did want to meet the big guns at Farnborough, but you slipped this in, and I didn't want you wandering around on your own, looking disappointed and lonely, so I've come down to see you.
We need a quick "that's what she said" when you say things like that.
Surely not. That's what she said. Surely not.
Ivor, where's your handler?
Well, I've been on good behaviour, so I've been let loose.
I just think you managed to give him a slip.
Hello, I'm Mike. Local to here. I'm a long-time listener. Probably in the not the teens, in the double figures at least. And nice local meet for me. So it's my first time out, and glad to meet everyone.
Great to have you here.
Hi there, Richard Adams from private pilot from the Isle of Wight, and it's my second meetup after the brilliant Goodwood one.
That was good, wasn't it?
It was excellent. Yeah.
And we need to go flying sometime.
We have, and I might be able to help you out with that.
Hi there, here's a new face.
Hi, I'm Matt. Down from Oxford, and I missed you guys at Pittsburgh by about 30 seconds.
Oh no, you were in Pittsburgh?
Yes, I managed to get out there on a work trip.
Wow, what a pain that was, and what a shame. Okay, is that everyone? No, there's some idiot here with the camera.
Yes, Nev here, being a nuisance with the camera. But yeah, it's a great meetup, and the weather's perfect for it, isn't it? So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, shame we're going to be indoors all day. All right, brilliant. We'll get on with our wander around the museum, and as people tag on later, I'll introduce them. And continuing, this is introductions part 2. And who's the next person on the list who came late but very welcome? It is young Barbara.
Hello, Captain Nick. Yeah, sorry I arrived late. It's the traffic. But it's great to be here at Museum at Hendon.
We have now. I'm very sorry to say at that point had a little microphone problem. Have to have a look at that. But the next person I chatted to was Graham Haley, who has very recently started work at Heathrow Airport as an air traffic controller. Hello, mate. There, you're having a good lunch.
I certainly am, yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, jacket potato with tuna and cheese and a bit of salad.
Very nice. Well, all I managed to get out of Graham, I'm afraid, was his lunch choice. But the next fine fellow I managed to get a chat to is Pilot Pip from Plane Safety Podcast. When you come to the RF Museum at Hendon, and here's someone we all know and hate.
Oh, Nick. Well, I love you and you know that.
It took you long enough to invite me onto your show.
Wow. You have to earn it, you know. You can't just appear willy-nilly.
Well, I was champing at the bit. I couldn't wait.
Well, you did a very good job as well.
You're very kind. It must be all that training that Captain Jeff's given me. I don't think I've missed anyone out, have I? Okay, I know Laurie is wandering around. Laurie Lowe. He arrived just as we were coming into the restaurant. So because he was a bit late, he went off to see some exhibits. We might catch him later. And indeed, we did. So this is Laurie, and he arrived late, but we're going to say hello to him all the same. Hi, Laurie.
Hi, how you doing?
What are you doing? Fine. Say hello to the APG audience.
Hi, how you doing? My name's Laurie. I'm from Finchley, and I'm actually a musician. I'm not a pilot, but I hope to be.
Well, I'm sorry, everybody, but at that point, the audio just about gave out, and Laurie got cut short. I'll try and do better next time. There you go. That's life on the APG show. Now, back to Jeff in the studio.
Thank you very much, Nick. And yes, that is life on the APG show. Unfortunately,
it'll teach me for trying to do things on the quick and not put earbuds in. So
yes.
So I was just relying on the audio working, and it had done previously, but I was a loose connection, or that mic I've got is dying. So my apologies for that. Luckily, I had 2 microphones running at the same time, but the top ones on the H5 aren't particularly good, so we lost some of that. But it was great to see everyone. I think there were 13 of us in total. Had a lovely walk around. The staff were kind enough to open up the Phantom cockpit and let us all climb in and sit in, something they don't normally do. And it was just really nice. Time flew. And I was probably going on way too long to everyone about various war stories from the days past. So my apologies for that.
You know, it's such a shame that, you know, we couldn't be there, but, you know, it would have been nice to have like a video of the entire meetup.
Would that have been good?
It would have been really, really. Oh, wait a minute. Didn't Nev say something about the fact that he had a camera? Did he happen to take some video footage?
Yeah, as it turned out, of course, Nev was doing a little bit of practice work because he's going to be doing a lot of video work for PT UK this summer at various air shows. So he had his beautiful 4K, very expensive and very capable video camera. And he was doing some recording and presented us with a lovely little edited video to put on the website.
That he did, and if you'll just refer to our show notes for this show, you will have or see a link to the YouTube channel. Of course, it's the YouTube channel that you can find the APG show, the raw footage of us recording this audio, and you can check out the meetup that you just heard some audio from, and you can see Captain Nick sitting in that F4 cockpit and a few other airplanes as well, I believe.
Yeah, we found the very basic jet trainer I trained in, the Jet Provis Mark III, which
yeah,
brought
it
back
looked like you were
memories.
a little bit too large for that cockpit to me.
Well, I think they had little plywood seats in there, which I think were generally set for child height. So I had my head stuck out in the slipstream.
Yeah, I was trying to imagine how you could be sitting in there with your helmet and everything else on and not poking your head through the cockpit.
Yeah, I was a lot smaller in those days.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And we also got to see Pilot Pip was sitting in the F4, I believe. And
Yes, he was. He came along later because he just landed off a trip, and he came more or less straight over from Heathrow, just with a cardigan thrown over his uniform, and joined us. So it was great to see Pip. It was really nice.
Excellent. So again, please do check out that wonderfully crafted video by our good friend Neville Bounds, and again, that's on the APG video channel on YouTube. All right. Anything else, Captain Nick, before we move on to? I'm going to go next, and then we're going to save Dana for last because I think he has a lot to tell us.
No, I have nothing to say. I never do.
So, Nick, may I talk a little bit about my last trip?
I think you should. I think I've said quite enough.
Okay. So I just got back from a 3-day trip, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I flew with this gentleman who was 26 or is 26 years old, and he looks young for a 26-year-old. So I'm sure they were making all kinds of jokes. Yeah, it looks like this guy brought his son to work. But very nice chap, as you say in the UK. And so started talking about this and that, where you're from, the standard stuff that you do when you're flying with someone you have not flown with before. And I did notice that he had what appeared to be like a hearing aid over his left ear, and then come to find out that he actually had one on the other side as well. And he said, actually, he is almost completely 100% deaf. And those were cochlear implants. And he received those when he was about 14 or 15 years old. He was born with this condition, just a very, very bad hearing loss or lack of hearing at birth. And a great story. It's one of those stories that I wish that I had Captain Steve with me, the How I Got Here guy, to interview him because it was just an amazing story that at a very young age, at 8 months, his mother, all along was kind of suspecting that there was some kind of an issue. And I don't know, had a hunch that perhaps he couldn't hear very well, and found out that he had almost complete hearing loss. And so he wanted to be an airline pilot, but figured, there's no way that he could be. And so he ended up, through the encouragement of several people, made it, found an aviation medical examiner that understood what was required for hearing and getting a Class 1 medical certificate. And he ended up getting one and getting a job flying airplanes with regional airlines. And then, of course, eventually a major, Acme. He's flying with us. And he has been with us for about a year or so. It was such a pleasure flying with him. What a great story. Always good to hear, positive news like that, because we've talked about several cases of people with medical disabilities and overcoming them, and able to get what was required by the FAA to become a professional pilot. So, that was pretty cool. His name was Josh, or is Josh, and perhaps we'll hear from him more in the future. And that was the good news. Bad news is I ended up getting something in the mail. Now, if you're watching the video, you'll see it says jury summons. And I'm thinking, oh, great. This is like the 5th time or more I've gotten one of these things since I've lived in this county, Fulton County in Georgia. And I looked at the date, and the date is right in the middle of July. So let me think. Is there anything else that might be in the middle of July that I would like to attend?
Wimbledon?
Well, I think, yes, Wimbledon is that time of year, isn't it? But or maybe a little bit earlier in the month. But
no,
that's,
I can't think of anything, Jeff.
yeah, like maybe Riyadh or perhaps Farnborough.
Damn, no.
Yeah.
And the worst thing about it is they have you call the night before to see if you've actually been summoned. And because of that, That's
I have
that's
to be there.
Terrible. Yeah, you have
So
to be there.
my status is, or my service term is 1 day or 1 trial. Now it's possible that they'll the night before tell me I don't need to come in, and then I can get myself to London quickly and maybe catch the public portion of the Farnborough Air Show, or maybe I won't be so lucky and end up getting tasked with a trial that lasts for more than 1 day. So we'll see. But that was a major bummer. I was trying to look for reasons for exclusion, but I'm not 70 years old yet. I know I look like it, but I'm not. And people might argue that I am physically and or mentally handicapped. So, but I'm not sure I could pull that off either. So, looks like I'm going to be here on the 17th, and really kind
that's
of
just a nightmare, Jeff. I mean, is there anyone you know that looks a bit like you? You could send in your place.
No, I don't.
Not
know
even Dana with a stick-on mustache.
We could try it, but I don't know.
Even some stick on hair to go with it too.
Oh,
I have to buy a nice wig.
You've got those wacky glasses and that visor with the white hair.
Yeah,
that would
that'd be
work.
perfect.
Would work a treat. Yeah.
The other thing that's of a little bit of concern is if many of you know in my private life that I'm required to go possibly to a trial in the latter portion of July, the 25th, out in Orange County, California, and I'm wondering if that's going to cause a problem as well. So fingers crossed, all this will work out.
It's not really what you needed on top of everything,
No,
Jeff. Is it?
not at all. But well. So just to let you know that's a possibility. I might not make it to Farnborough. Definitely not make it to Riop, but possibly not Farnborough either. But fingers crossed. Okay, let's see. Captain Dana, I think that you might have something informative for the listeners.
Yes, and I have to apologize to the Coffee Fund cadre, because I promised that I would make more recordings as far as my recent transition to upgrade. However, because this last couple days has been so challenging, I basically came to the room after both days and passed out. So I'll start off with that. I will make another recording, maybe even after the show today, or at least over the weekend. I finished my training, as most of you know, that I finished the training back about a week and a half ago. And because of that delay, they ended up having to take my trip from me. So I didn't begin my first flight or line flying until this past week, on Tuesday to be more specific. And I thought that would be okay, but as most of you know, I talked about my last trip as a first officer and how beautiful the weather is, or was. That could not be the furthest from the truth this past week here in the Southeast. The weather has been absolutely miserable. Of course, it figures that that's when I get to go out and start my first trip as a captain. And did that on Tuesday. I met the line check airman, who has turned out to be a fantastic gentleman to fly with. He is very patient, very helpful, and very encouraging. So so far he's saying I'm doing a great job. I don't know who he is flying with. Can't be me, but he says I'm doing a great job. It's been my first ever leg. Couldn't have flown to a more comfortable destination for me, because I've been there quite a bit. Was into the Windsor Locks Airport and that's known as Hartford Springfield Airport, International Airport, BDL, for those who like the airline airport code, KBDL for those who don't know the domestic code here in the U.S. And that was it was just one leg. That was not too eventful. It was a pretty easy event. Of course, one thing that I've noticed the last 2 days of flying is that I have 10 and a half years worth of experience in the airplane, about that. And I felt like the first day I got into the airplane was the first time I've ever flown the airplane. I was completely lost. When we landed 2.5 hours later in Hartford, I think I still was in Atlanta, hanging onto the tail of the aircraft.
How
But
did you make this thing go up again?
yeah, exactly. I had no clue. I just sat there like, oh my God, what am I doing? Who am I? And how come I don't know this airplane? Because it was crazy. I was looking at it like, all right, I got all my flows down. I actually having no problem. A lot of people have a lot of issues transitioning 36 inches as far as doing all the flows and knowing where the switches are with the right hand versus all those years with the left hand. So I'm actually doing very well with that. I'm doing very well with the call outs, the procedures, et cetera, but my brain passed the aft lav in the back of the airplane by the aft air stairs, somewhere around there, because I'm barely holding on. So Tuesday was pretty uneventful. Wednesday, all hell broke loose. I had 4 legs dealing with Atlanta weather, thunderstorms all over the place. And we took off out of Bradley. And that morning I knew I was in trouble, because as soon as we get to the airplane, they have 2 primary runways in Hartford. One, which I think I've taken off of in 10.5 years once. It's real short. It's about 6,600 feet. And the long runway, which is just touch here under 10,000 feet, which is a 6 and 2.4, which is the runway that we normally use. And here I am in an MD-90. Oh, by the way, my first flight was an MD-90, and I love that because it's a great airplane. Easy to taxi, throttles are responsive, the brakes are great. So fortunately, we're coming out of Hartford in an MD-90, because we had to take off a runway 33, which is straight towards what I would call mountains, but people call hills. Excuse me. So I knew that when that had got thrown at me, it was going to be an interesting day. So we flew down to Atlanta, and of course we were delayed due to the weather, and we ended up running the entire day from airplane to airplane to airplane to airplane. And I say airplane to airplane to airplane 3 times, because I've never swapped aircraft with a 41-minute scheduled turn time in an outstation. And we did in Baltimore, of course. So anyways, get into Atlanta, no problem. We take off out of Atlanta, and we get a call as soon as we take off. Acme, where are you guys going? Excuse me? What do you mean, where are we going? You guys on XYZ departure? The other captain and I looked at each other. Yeah, we looked right down, make sure we're on that departure. We show you completely off course. This is climbing through about, 800-900 feet. And of course, I've never heard that, because we verified, double and triple verified, that we're on the right departure. And of course, I'm flying with a check airman, so being extra vigilant is the word. And they say, well, where are you guys going? Well, we're on the departure. No, you're not. We show you way off course. Turn left, blah, 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 blah. And now we're in an MD-90, which has a GPS. I could understand it if we were in the MD-88, which has does not have a GPS for location. It has well, not IRUs anymore. It's oh my God, help me out, Jeff. I'm having a brain fart all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, no, they are IRUs.
IRUs. I'm sorry, I'm thinking AHRs. That's right. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, the IRUs. So they have a little bit of map shift. They can have a little bit of map shift. So that I can understand, but not in a 90 with GPS. It knows exactly where we are. So here we are, thinking that we're screwing something up, and we start turning to a heading, and air traffic control comes back. I've never heard this. The last time I actually heard something crazy out of Atlanta was my first time I flew with an FAA check airman in the jump seat when I was upgrading at my former carrier. When they told me to climb, maintain, and cross a fix, climbing out of Atlanta on the downwind, on the climb out, which I had never heard in a million years in Atlanta either. You never hear that. They just tell you climb, maintain altitude. They said, well, climb, maintain above such and such a fix. And here I am just taking off. So that's the last time. That's like, what, 12 years ago now? So that's how that started. Well, the air traffic controller comes back and says, well, we had the wrong screen up. Sorry. Continue with the departure. I'm thinking to myself, my God. I mean, this is crazy talk. So we continue out and we head on to, we're going to BWI, Baltimore. We have somebody from Baltimore that loves us, and we hear from him all the time, Hillel. So that was my second place I flew to. Going up to Baltimore, I have several notes on the flight plan that says, one of the notes was that the Blue Angels were flying a air show over in Annapolis. That triggered 3 runway changes, 3 different briefings. And of course, I'm thinking to myself, my God, this couldn't, because the winds were favoring one runway, runway 33 left, right down the runway. And they were 20, I think it was 18 knots gusting to 24. Direct crosswind because they gave us 2.8 because of the Blue Angels at the air show. So I'm thinking, oh my God, all right, so this is my second landing in the airplane. And here I am having to fly almost a max crosswind landing because it's convenient for the Blue Angels. So briefed it up three different times because we got switched back and forth, back and forth. And of course, every time we have proper way of doing is transferring controls. And by the time we got through the last briefing, I ended up being, know this aircraft like the back of my hand, have flown it forever. I got so far behind the aircraft and bringing it into Baltimore, I crossed, I was about 10 miles from the airport doing 250 knots, not configured at all. And he's looking at me and says, well, are you ever going to configure this airplane and land it? It's like, oh God, here we go. So I got way behind the airplane, like if I had never flown the airplane before. That's why I said I felt like a complete idiot. Get the airplane on the ground, get to Baltimore. Of course, guess what? We're late again. Excuse me. Hold on. I'm getting so choked up here. So anyways, continuing, and then I'm going to close up this story here pretty quickly. Get to Baltimore, and they overboard the aircraft. Passengers are getting on. The flight attendants are in a bad mood. They're threatening to kick people off the aircraft. They're getting in fights with passengers, and they have too many people on the aircraft. Then we're taxiing out after we took a 7-minute delay and get the airplane configured, short taxi out to runway 28 for takeoff. We landed in 3-3, by the way, 3-3 left. That was, an eventful occurrence. So we take off from runway 28, but we're taxiing out, and I don't know, Jeff, I have never gotten a call from air traffic control in all the years I've been flying saying, contact the company for this reason. We call the company. Yeah, we don't know who's sitting in seat 12D. Oh, and while you're at it, can you find out who's sitting in 12E? After they had started this whole process, the flight attendant goes back there and takes a picture of the person's boarding pass and couldn't figure out how to look at the picture on the phone for some reason. She took a video or something. She screwed it up. So here we are on a very short taxi out, trying to get the other engine started. And oh, by the way, did I happen to mention we had a takeoff time and we had beer 1 to 5 minutes. So here we have operations trying to get 2 different names of the flight attendant that didn't know what she was doing in the back and trying to get the airplane prepped off the aircraft, take off the ground. So I get to Atlanta. I'm sorry, I stepped back. And we had an aircraft swap in Baltimore, 41-minute ground time. And we were delayed into Baltimore. So here I am trying to brief, trying to do everything, and I'm already way behind the 8 ball trying to get everything done. And the delay wasn't on me, fortunately, but it was just trying to wrap my head around all this with 4 legs in one day. And of course, the weather was crappy everywhere, especially down here in the Southeast. And then we fly into Mobile, and we're supposed to land on runway 33. That's what they were calling on the ATIS. And then about 20 miles from the airport, well, runway 15 is available. You want that? Here we are, high, fast, and we threw everything out to get down to the runway. Of course, it was his leg at that time, and I'm sitting there saying to myself, oh, my God. As a first officer, I wouldn't have been able to do this, no problem. Now, where I am sitting, I was like, all right, I'm still on the tail. when he's landing the aircraft. I mean, it's an awesome feeling. To be honest, it's a great feeling to be captain. But I'll tell you what, I don't like being the new guy in the block anymore. I mean, it's a lot of stuff going on, and my head, my brain is hurting because I have to think about so many things, and we do it. 4 legs a day is a lot. It's a lot, especially as a new captain. It was just with dealing with everything I had to deal with. 2 or 3 legs would have been fantastic. Yesterday was just over the top for me. So I'm enjoying it. And when I went to work, getting on the bus, they said, "Hey, good afternoon, Captain." And it used to be when I was a first officer, somebody would say that, "Yeah, whatever. So what?" They don't obviously know what the 3 or 4 stripes means. But now when they actually said it, it really hit home. And it was really a great feeling that somebody said and looked at me and said, "Hi, Captain." So yeah, it
turns
was.
out that they were actually talking to your co-pilot.
Yeah, probably.
Just kidding.
So, but it's been a whirlwind. Now I'm on a 34-hour layover in Mobile, so I'm actually able to get wrap my head around some of what's happened and think about it and analyze it. And I just don't understand why you cannot get light off, brake pressure checked, radar off, and flaps and slats retracted. I just cannot get. And when you're taxiing into the gate, those are the 4 things you need to look at. And for some reason, I can't get it through my thick skull to look at that stuff. So other than that, everything's going great. I mean, I'm enjoying being a captain. I know I'm having first world problems complaining about what a tough day, but let me tell you, it was actually, I mean, even as a experienced first officer, I was out flying yesterday, it would have been very challenging for me as an experienced first officer, let alone a brand new captain. So a lot of good learning went on, a lot of things I saw yesterday that I have never seen as an airline pilot. But fortunately I had a real good line check airman next to me that really helped me out in a lot of ways. So, and not making the decisions for me, but helping, guiding me in the right direction. So a lot of good learning going on. So that's the positive side of things. But I didn't even get out. I never sleep in. I didn't get out of bed until 12:30 today. I don't ever sleep in.
1:30 our time.
Yeah, 1:30. Yeah, I'm 1 hour behind. So I am exhausted. And I still got to study today. So it should be fun. So that's my long soliloquy, and I'm gonna stop talking now.
So is the line check airman's first name Mike?
No, Mark.
Ah, okay.
He loves it too because I say Mark.
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 So we're getting a lot of good feedback from the live chat room. This one from Nico. He says the craziest things happen when you're flying with new captains. That's a scientific law.
That's true.
It's so true. I mean, I'm sure I've shared my first trip that I flew. Oh, you're still on the IOE though. Usually it happens after you've completed your IOE and you're on your first trip by yourself as the captain. You don't have another line check captain with you. That all the crazy stuff happens. So maybe you're just getting it all out of your system now, Dana.
God, I hope so, because that was just day 2.
Wow.
And
just thank the heavens it's not winter and you're not in the middle of snowstorms and everything else.
Actually, I'd rather that than what I've dealt with yesterday.
I'd rather deal with that than all the thunderstorms and everything. Yeah,
absolutely would have. And the weather could not be any worse or more challenging than it's been the last 2 days. It's been bad.
As many are saying in the chat room, it's you obviously it was a good test for you, and you're going to look back at this and laugh about it in the future. Not so funny right now, but
no,
in the future you'll look back and think, "Wow, what an experience."
Yeah, that's exactly. I called my wife last night and I said exactly what I said. Wow, what have I gotten myself into? This is crazy, crazy. I mean, it was just.
It'll get easier though as time goes on. Trust me.
I hope so.
Promise.
I really, it's got to get yesterday. I mean, I went from a, best way I can put it, from a calm sea to a typhoon or hurricane. I mean, it was nasty. It was very, very, very hard. So, but then at the end of the day, as I said before, the line check airman said, I'm doing a great job. And he actually, quote unquote, said, if it was legal for him to sign me off right now, he would.
Well, that's a
what he
good
said
sign.
to me. So I think that's probably a good sign.
Great compliment. Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
forged by fire, Dana. Forged by fire.
Ooh, I hope it can only get better. I'm looking forward to that.
No, you shouldn't have said that.
Fired by Forge.
Yeah.
That
thank
too.
you.
Captain Forge says you're fired.
It's Captain Forge, actually.
I think I did jinx myself because there's a tropical depression down in the Caribbean, and I'm heading down tomorrow to Montego Bay and back. So I think.
Oh my! Oh my! Have fun. Yeah, that's heading up here for the weekend, Dana. It's supposed to be a huge washer, or whatever they call that. A big tropical depression with all kinds of rain.
Oh yeah, of course. That's my wonderful luck, and of course I went out and bought a floating vessel. And the spring couldn't have been any worse this year. And of course, Memorial Day weekend, I had to really work around and get Memorial Day weekend off. And what's going to happen? It's going to rain the entire weekend.
Enjoy it inside your house.
Pretty much. Unbelievable.
Washout this weekend. Wow, Dana. Well, I'm sure that we're going to hear more stories from you. And but I hope that this day off will give you a chance to recharge the battery, and then everything will be fine for the rest of the trip.
Yeah, and good thing I had 34 hours in Mobile, because I went and I talked to Captain Bourbon for a couple of
oh yeah,
hours.
Captain Bourbon.
Yeah. Oh, so anyways, it's been fun. So thank you for the time, and
yeah,
I'm glad
everybody loves
could
your
listen.
Because not everybody can, for whatever reason, get the job that we have that we love so much, and it's kind of nice to be able to share these experiences with people. So,
yep, it sure is, and certainly I'm saying all this with a kind of a smile on my face, because all these issues are first world problems, not life-changing problems. I'm learning, obviously. But I say it, and I know most of you that don't listen, or some of you that don't listen to the actual crew logs. That's one of the things I say in every single time, is that I appreciate the fact that I'm in this position. It's truly an honor, and I know that I'm living it for most of this community, and that's why I'm still active and participate. So I can contribute in my own way to helping people understand or appreciate what we do, and help anybody that wants to move forward in this business, because it really is a great business to be involved in. So I appreciate the forum that we have, and you guys, and Dr. Steph. So it really, I think, really helps the people that listen to the show. So I enjoy being part of that, really.
And we enjoy you being a part of it as well.
Thank you.
So
we enjoy you enjoying it.
Enjoy. Thank you.
Enjoy. I think we all agree we enjoy.
So let's see. We strive for that as high an accuracy rate as we can, but we don't always get there. And last show, I have to say, embarrassingly, we did, mostly me, did a poor job at accuracy. First of all of us kind of thought, or I know I did, that windscreen crack video that we saw on YouTube. This is from Adam. He said, guys, quick feedback about APG 324 about the cracked windscreen. I'm pretty sure the video has been confirmed as being from a different flight than the one in China where the windscreen failed. So that's good to know. I mean, it's not good to know that we screwed that up, but it's good to know that we did screw that up, because we were all concerned that should be the last thing that you would be concerned about doing, taking a video of this windscreen that's eventually going to crack and then suck half of you out of it, out of that hole that it leaves. So thank you very much, Adam, for clarifying that. The two mistakes that I made, first one's a little one. The wingspan I said was 100 on the Mad Dog was 108 feet 10 inches. Basically, it's 108 feet is what we rounded off to. It's actually 107 feet 10 inches, so just 2 inches shy of 108 feet for the wingspan on the Mad Dog. So apologies for that bad info. And then the other thing that I said about the IAV engine, IAE V2528 engine that we have on the MD-90, and the fact that so many people have said that the only place in the world that does the overhaul on that particular engine is in New Zealand, and I thought that's just a bunch of poppycock. And then I thought to myself, well, maybe I should relook into this, and I did, and I found out that there are many, many places around the world that do overhauls on the V2500 series engine, but the one that is most common, like 99.9% of them, it's the A5 variation of the engine, which is the one that they use on the Airbus series. The one that they happen to have put on the MD-90 is the V2500 D5. So it's not the A5, it's the D5. And I think the D stands for Acme. Yeah, you like that?
Yeah,
So
very good.
apparently, maybe that is true, that the only place in the world that does overhauls on these things is in New Zealand. And so that, raises an interesting question as far as, I think the original plan was to continue flying these airplanes at Acme until like the mid 2020s or so. But I was talking to a mechanic on my last trip, and he said that he had heard that because of the scarcity of places that do overhauls in these things, that they're just going to keep on running them until the engines basically run out of time, and then they're just going to park them.
Fall off.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I mentioned, my neighbor 3 houses down is the only other Acme person in my hood that works for Acme.
Mhm.
And he happens to be the maintenance manager at the TOC, or Technical Operations Center, where they do all the maintenance on the aircraft. And that's where I got my information from, directly from him.
Yeah.
We have a friend of the show also. I think he told me it was 7 90s right now that are parked, that weren't supposed to be parked, and that's simply because we just don't have parts, and or that the engines are all the way down in New Zealand, getting overhauled, and it's something over $5 million per engine, from what I understand. It's crazy. It's just, so the fleet plan has changed very rapidly.
So maybe that means that I'll be flying the venerable Boeing 7576 sometime nearer in the future than I had anticipated, but we'll see.
Yeah. Also, we're going to 500-mile stage lengths.
Yeah, I did hear about that from
so
operations. Yeah. But in a way, that doesn't really bother me, except if you have to fly more legs per day to get your block time in, which is what it probably implies. Unless you're really super senior, as I am, and then you just put in white slips for turnarounds. But we'll see. Sorry, Dana.
Yeah, well, that's the reason why I think my stint as a captain may be short-lived.
Yeah, we're just going to have to, it's a dynamic situation. We'll just have to see,
We'll
how
have
it
to
all
wait and
shakes
see.
out, I guess.
Have to wait and see.
Okay, so I'm sure we made more mistakes than that, but those are the 3 that just really stuck out when I was doing my audio editing and doing some follow-up. So again, hopefully we're getting everything straightened out as we go along on this wonderful APG journey. And unless you all have something else to talk about, I think it might be a good time for us to move on to the coffee fund, and then we can move on to news and feedback. What do you think?
Hooray.
Let's
All right.
go. I've already talked too much.
Johnny, how much more coffee? No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community.
Coffee and tea, and the driver and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
All right. The Coffee Fund is your way to support our show financially, if you have the resources to do so. And we have a couple of different ways to do that. And those who do contribute, we call our Coffee Fund cadre. And the first one we'll talk about is the Coffee Fund Classic method, basically a PayPal donation page, and you can do a one-time donation or a recurring donation if you'd like. And since the last show, Mike Bain gave us a very generous one-time contribution. Hopefully not one-time, Mike. Thank you very much for that. We do appreciate it. The other way to do it, many of you, most of you who contribute to our show are patrons of our show via patreon.com. And since the since the last show, we have a new producer, Ben Richards. Thank you, Ben, for becoming a patron of the Airline Pilot Guy show. And if you want to find out more about either of these methods, please head over to the airlinepilotguy.com website, airlinepilotguy.com/coffee, where you can sign up to be part of that wonderful group, the Coffee Fun Cadre. Thanks again.
Stand by for news.
We'll start out with the first item in our news folder, and this is from the USA Today media outlet. The headline, Baboon briefly escapes crate, roams loose at San Antonio Airport in Texas. They go on, a baboon escaped from a crate at the San Antonio International Airport Monday afternoon. Airport officials confirmed the primate was on board American Airlines Flight 1014 from Chicago. While moving the crate from the plane's cargo hold and to the baggage area, the baboon got loose. That's Loose, by the way, for those of you who do not know how to spell loose. Viewer video captured the monkey moving from the American Airlines facilities and towards the United Airlines baggage area, where it was able to evade authorities for almost an hour. San Antonio police say the monkey was contained around 3:45 p.m. Crews were able to isolate the monkey to a room at the airport. Most operations at San Antonio International have returned to normal, though the airport has announced that some flights may be delayed due to the wildlife issue. According to American Airlines, the baboon was flying to San Antonio to be placed at the Born Free Primate Sanctuary in LaSalle County, Texas. And yes, you can't just say Born Free, you have to actually sing it when you talk about the Born Free Primate Sanctuary in
My dad's in that movie.
Your dad is in Born Free?
Yep.
Was he part of the flying in the movie?
Yep.
Wow.
In the middle of Born Free, a VC-10 lands and brings the heroine, the lady, back into Nairobi, and that was the old man flying the airplane.
Oh, how cool!
You don't see much of the approach. You see a little bit of the approach and him taxiing it. You don't see him at all. But what amused him was he landed and they'd had all the cameras there, and the director came up to him after he'd landed and said, "Look, that all happened a bit quick. Any chance you could go out and do it again, but slower?"
Oh yeah, sure. Wow, that's interesting. So he had no idea that he was being filmed when he came in.
I think he knew. Yeah, I think he knew.
Okay.
But yeah.
Wow. That's cool. That's very interesting. Okay. The article goes on. In a written statement, the airlines said that they were assisting in the effort along with the San Antonio Zoo, and officials from the zoo are now on site to ensure safety and well-being as he continues his journey to his new home at the primate sanctuary. Captain Nick, you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I'd just like to boost our accuracy slightly. It wasn't a baboon; it was a rhesus macaque monkey named Dawkins, and was a research animal from Brown University on his way to a wildlife sanctuary to retire. I wonder what kind of research they did on them. That piece of information was from CBS News transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve. So thank you for that, Chris, and correcting our previous statement. It wasn't a baboon at all. In fact, we've got a picture of Dawkins there trying to skulk away underneath a truck. By the looks of it.
Dawkins, come on.
Yeah, what are we going to do with you?
You know what? That wasn't our mistake, Nick. It was the USA Today. So.
Yeah, but we promoted it.
Oh, we still get charged with it. Then.
I'm afraid that still counts on the negative side.
Oh well.
But we've recovered now. We've recovered.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, thank you very much.
Above 50%. You're welcome.
So you probably looked at the picture of Dawkins and said, "Wait a minute, that's not a baboon. I know my monkeys."
Exactly right. Yeah, I'm a monkey expert. Yeah, I do a lot of monkeying around.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're a monkey.
Yeah, I am for sure. Yeah, we all are, I think.
Yeah.
Actually, we're not. We're apes, aren't we? Rather than monkeys.
Well, we're all primates, maybe.
Yeah, we're all primates.
Whatever. Okay. Moving on. This might, Nick, you might be able to help us with this one. The second one in the news folder. And I'm not sure how you pronounce this airline name. Onur? Is that how you do that? I've never heard of this. Onur
No,
Air.
I haven't either. No.
Airbus A330-200 on behalf and in colors of Saudi Arabian Airlines. Registration number Tango Charlie Oscar Charlie Hotel, performing flight 3818. That's Saudi Arabian Airlines flight 3818 from Medina in Saudi Arabia to Dhaka, Bangladesh. Is that the way you pronounce
Dhaka,
it?
yes.
Dhaka. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Was en route at flight level 370, about 200 nautical miles northeast of Medina, when the crew decided to turn around and divert to Jeddah. The aircraft went around from about 1,000 feet MSL on the first approach due to an unsafe gear indication, entered a hold for about 1 hour while working with the checklists, performed a low approach to Jeddah, and subsequently positioned for a full stop landing without the nose gear. Aircraft landed on Jeddah's runway 34 right about 4.5 hours after departing from Medina and skipped on main gear and aircraft nose, producing sparks to a halt on the runway. The aircraft was evacuated. No injuries are being reported. This is according to the Aviation Herald at the time. And the aircraft sustained substantial damage. And then there's a couple of photos in here that show all the sparks being thrown out from the nose forward fuselage area of the airplane when it was skidding down the runway. Although I did find another news article that said that, and this is according to the Saudi Gazette, that 141 passengers and 10 crew members on board the aircraft proceeded to an emergency exit using the airplane slides. So in other words, when they were they did evacuate, and they reported that 52 passengers were treated by the airport medical teams and 4 were transported to a nearby health center. One passenger in particular suffered from multiple fractures. So that kind of is a little bit different than the statement that no injuries were, well, it says no injuries were being reported. So maybe they did have some injuries there. But so obviously they were flying along. They have some kind of a hydraulic problem. I don't know. Would you get an actual enunciation that there's something wrong with your nose wheel, or would it be something to do with your hydraulic system, or do we know?
I wish I had more details. There are multiple indicators to show that your gear are down and locked. So you've got double position indicators, and you've got 2 LCGRUs, 2 landing gear computers, and they swap around every time you cycle the gear. They swap. So the usual actions, if you get an unsafe gear indication, is to recycle the gear, and that swaps the LCGRU around. You use the other one. But the huge majority of these are just indication problems, because you've got proximity sensors that indicate when the gear is fully down and locked. And you only need one. You've got double indicators for each gear, so you've got redundancy, lots of backup. You only need one indicator to show the gear is down for you to know it's safe. It's pretty rare not to get gear down. The only other one I heard of is from an airline not dissimilar to Acme Red that had a mechanical failure of part of the gear assembly, which jammed one of the main gear up, and they landed with one main gear and nose gear, and that was a 340. Now, so almost unheard of to have an undercarriage problem with this. If your main gear doesn't come down on the hydraulic system, then there is a gravity lowering system, which is pretty much foolproof. So that fails as well, then it probably means to me that there must have been something relatively serious with that, the mechanics of that nose gear. Perhaps the doors failed or jammed, something to hold it up and prevent it from coming down. Pretty rare. And normally with just a nose gear missing, it's a fairly safe landing. The aircraft's going to be in an odd attitude, obviously, because you're like missing 4 or 5 feet of gear there, and you're obviously going to scrape the aircraft skin, the nose along the ground. But it's a lot safer than landing without a main gear, where the aircraft will tip over on side, and you'll obviously get that wing and the engine scraping on the ground, which is not good at all. So this is, if you're going to get a gear stuck up, this is the one to have, the nose gear stuck up. Of course, when it comes to the evacuation, with the nose right down on the ground, the tail's going to be way up in the air. So if possible, you need to avoid using the rear doors, because instead of being in the aircraft fuselage level, the tail is now jacked up in the air, and that slide is going to be close to vertical. So you can deploy it and take a look at it, but the advice is, unless it's absolutely essential, you evacuate from the other doors. And I don't know whether the injured passengers went out of the rear door. Yeah, it's not ideal when that happens, but the aircraft, I would expect, the one we had with a main gear, it was back flying again within a few weeks. They patched it up and got it going again. There was no major damage. But then again, that pilot was at that time the British aerobatics champion. Fine fellow, young Tim. He was a marvelous pilot, and he did a grand job landing it. So if this guy landed it reasonably well, I would hope it would be back in the air pretty quickly.
Go ahead, Dana.
I was just going to say, one of the things that, as I'm listening to Nick talk, and it's really kind of amazing to me now that I'm thinking in completely different terms, like which door you'd go out, and obviously the front doors in this case would be obviously the better choice. I would imagine if anybody went out of the back doors, that the injuries would be substantial, because that tail would be extremely high up in the air. The slides would not reach the ground, I would imagine, because they're designed, for the airplane to be on its mains or even less. So that it probably added another 6, 7, 8 feet in height. So that would be, pretty close to a 20-foot drop, I would imagine. So I think, if anybody went out the back, the injuries would be substantial. A lot more than just a couple broken bones, which can just happen coming down the slide. In any case, even off our aircraft, which is pretty close to the ground.
Well, speaking of our aircraft and emergency evacuations, it was a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't really heard much about this incident. It was at Acme, an MD-90 landing in Denver. After landing, shortly after landing, they were taxiing in, and a bunch of smoke started entering into the cabin through the air conditioning system. And they stopped the airplane and initiated an evacuation. And I don't know if you all saw any of these pictures, but they had a bunch of folks that went out the over wing exits, and they're just standing on the wing. And like, I don't know, it must be 20, 30 on the right wing that I could see, and they were probably doing the same thing on the other side. And you could hear, there's some video of it, and you could hear some people communicating the fact that they don't know how to get down. Like, and then someone saying, well, there was, the slide didn't deploy for us to get down from the wing. And I'm thinking, were they not, did they not pick up the safety brochure that shows you what you should do if you actually leave the airplane through the overwing exits on a Mad Dog? There are no slides. You slide down the back of the wing and down the flaps to the ground. But apparently they weren't paying attention to the briefing.
Well, I mean, think of it, Jeff. Think of it. Look at the videos and photos of that unfortunate incident on Southwest.
Yeah,
and the people with the masks not over. I mean, let's use common sense. Number one, you got to cover your mouth and nose, right, so you can breathe. But people just take safety for granted, and that's one of the biggest things as a captain, that we are really responsible for being the stop, because everybody has an expectation when they get on an aircraft that when they get on the aircraft, they're going to get to their destination in 100% condition, because we do it so well all the time that's the expectation. It's like if you go to a doctor's office and you go in for surgery, you go in and they tell you, well, there's a 20% chance that this could happen, and you go in, and even with that, knowing that fact, you fully expect to come out of a surgery much better, right? And not end up 6 feet under or whatever else. So what we do as captains is we manage that risk, and people have become so accustomed and so used to everything being so perfect. I would venture to guess even the highest mileage flyers probably have never picked up that card. Or somebody that's brand new, that's never been on an airplane, they may have looked at the card, but I would say 99% of the flying population probably has never even looked at that card.
Maybe 98. Come on, give me a break.
98. Yeah. Well, it's a high percentage. Yeah. It's seriously. I mean, it's
not going to happen to me,
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because we know, right? It's not going to happen to me because, well, as a person, that's just human nature. So I can see where those people were standing on the wing saying, well, what do I do now? Well, if you had done your due diligence, which is what the FAA has the flight attendants do this safety presentation. It's not for their good health. It's for a reason. People just don't pay attention.
Yeah, sadly. The other interesting thing about that video, and again, I don't know if you guys caught it, but they were kind of focusing on one of the, I think it was the rear right. Well, which one would have that have been? Anyway, one of the doors with the slides deployed, and people were throwing, this one guy threw his rollerboard down the slide, and then they had a couple of passengers at the bottom of the slide assisting passengers as they came down the slide. But when they saw this suitcase come down, they took the thing, and the guy just flings it like 30 feet on the asphalt. Obviously, because he was a little frustrated that somebody not only decided to take their luggage with them, which they're not supposed to do, but they threw it down the slide, which could have, torn up the slide and made it, ineffective for everyone behind them. So I don't know. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, that is. I mean,
that's the sort of thing I'm afraid I would do.
Oh yeah, it was you could just tell. It was like, are you kidding me? And he just tosses it, and the guy goes walking. The guy that comes down after his suitcase goes walking off to retrieve his bag. Probably didn't even understand, why the guy did that. Anyway, but getting back to the first part, they're en route at flight level 370, back to this Airbus 330-200. They're at flight level 370, and they obviously, something happened to indicate that something is wrong, and then they start talking about diverting. At that point, all the things that you talked about, Nick, were indications that you get for when you're extending the gear or raising the gear, the landing and takeoff operations. What would have happened at flight level 370 to indicate to them that there's a problem? Or do you think maybe something happened when they initially took off and they just continued to climb up to 37?
It could be a green hydraulic failure. That's the hydraulic system that operates the main gear, and it is the primary hydraulic system. If they had that go on them, that may have initiated the diversion. Because it's the primary hydraulic system, you don't really want to carry on without it. And of course, because that is the one that lowers the gear, the only way of lowering the gear then is using the gravity system. And if for some reason the gravity system failed, you're out of options then. There's no tertiary. There's only a primary and a secondary. So that may have been it. But I'm guessing here.
Okay. I was curious. Never flown the airplane, so I didn't know what might have happened there. Okay. Moving on to item C in the news, HR4, the House resolution. I think that's what that stands for. We've talked about the fact that the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018 had been making progress, and it was introduced and passed by the House of Representatives here in the U.S., and now it's awaiting the passage via the Senate. And I was reading something. No, I was actually flying with somebody that mentioned to me, can you believe that in that bill they have this authorization for commercial cargo aircraft to be piloted by a single pilot? And I said, huh? No, I didn't hear that. And actually, I pulled up the verbiage here of the bill. In this bill, sponsored by Representative Schuster, Bill Schuster, there is a provision in Section 744. The FAA, in consultation with NASA and other relevant agencies, shall establish a research and development program. So they're not actually authorizing single operation of commercial cargo aircraft. They have established a research and development program in support of single piloted cargo aircraft assisted with remote piloting and computer piloting. And many safety related organizations, including the Airline Pilots Association International, have spotted this and said, excuse me, wait a minute, what are you talking about here? We don't want that. That's not something that we should have in the bill. But apparently it was put in there, and in the present version of the bill is still there. And they have objected vociferously about it. And did you guys know anything about this?
No.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's the first time I'm hearing anything on it.
So I'm wondering if they're going to put some pressure on the senators to remove this part, this 744, Section 744. But if this ever happens, where we have single pilots operating commercial airliners, the only way that it will happen, in my opinion, will be for commercial cargo aircraft. But even then, people say, well, there's not passengers on board. Yeah, but if a cargo aircraft crashes into a neighborhood or a building or whatever, it's going to involve more than just the pilots.
As in the Belma Mia, we had as a plane tell a little while ago. Yeah, they killed 50 on the ground.
Right, and then that 747 in somewhere in Russia last year that plowed into a neighborhood when they were attempting a go around or something. So I mean, it happens. So, anywho, hopefully that will be removed from the bill before it passes the Senate and gets handed to the president to become law. An update on the Cubana. Actually, what was the name of the airline that actually operated it? They were from Global Air, I think, from Mexico. Mexican civil aviation authorities are conducting a special inspection of the charter operator at the center of the May 18th accident in Havana, and have suspended the company's operation until further notice. The third such action in 8 years against that carrier. The Directorate General of Civil Aeronautics, the DGAC, said it would conduct an extraordinary verification of Mexico City-based Global Aerolíneas Damoj, DAMOJH, or Global Air, and ground the carrier.
Demoje. It's pronounced like an H. Demoje.
Demoje. Okay, thank you. Let's see. One of their Boeing 737-200 models was flying for Cubana de Aviation when it went down shortly after departing Jose Marti International Airport in Havana last week. So just thought we'd update the progress of that investigation and the fact that they have suspended their operating certificate until further notice. So that could mean, just like that incident, the Canadian airline that took off out of Saskatchewan, I forgot what the airport name was, but they suspect that there were no de-icing procedures accomplished on the airplane, and they took off anyway and crashed. And then they kind of did the same thing with them, said we're suspending their certificate because obviously they're finding some significant safety lapses.
I'm trying to work out how they're still searching for the flight data recorder. I mean, it's not like the debris was spread over miles or was sunk into an ocean.
Yeah.
I mean, for heaven's sake, it should be just sitting there.
Well, I think there's a simple answer to that one.
They're
It
not
wasn't on
gonna
the
find
airplane.
it.
It wasn't on
Aye.
the airplane. I think that might be the simple answer.
You have to have both a cockpit voice recorder and a flight data recorder. I thought it was either or.
Yeah.
Oh well. Okay. Well, hopefully we'll hear more about that as the investigation continues. Another crash. This private jet crashed off the end of the runway of the international airport in Honduras's capital on Tuesday. This is the let's see, no, Mike Hotel. Let's see, what is the identifier here? I think I have it open in one of my browsers. Let me take a look here, just to make sure we get this right. Mike Hotel Tango Golf. Also, the three-letter identifier TGU. It's Tegucigalpa Toncontin Airport in Honduras.
I think that's correct.
And anyway, it was a Gulfstream Global 200, I believe, flying from Austin, Texas to Tegucigalpa and on Tuesday morning. And they landed on runway 2 and kept on going, even though they reached the end of the runway, went off the end of the runway, a runway excursion. And we've heard of crashes and problems with this runway before in the past. And it's not the first time an airplane has continued off. And then, of course, you reach the point where there is no more runway or earth, and it just drops down off I think a 50-foot cliff or something.
Yeah, it's pretty significant.
Ravine gully. Picture shows the Gulfstream jet basically broken in half, right about where the wing box is. And miraculously, folks responded immediately and got the 6 occupants. It varies depending on the news story. Some say 6, some say 9, but they got all of the people off of the airplane alive, and most of them just had maybe some scratches and bruises. There may be one passenger with more serious injuries taken to the hospital there in Tegucigalpa. But wow, what an accident!
And for people that have never heard of this airport, it's actually one of the most dangerous airports in the entire world. It's a very short runway, and it has a mountain quite literally at the end of the runway.
The other end of the runway.
Yeah,
but I think they actually did, I think, remove most of that mountain that was like on very short final and actually extended the runway a little bit, but it's still a very treacherous, you're right, Dana, very, very treacherous airport to land at.
And it's for those folks that listen to the show, if you ever want to go to YouTube and type in Tegucigalpa, Toncontin, Honduras, and look at some of the videos of some of these aircraft that have gone. I mean, it's crazy to watch these aircraft, 757, 737s. Yeah. I mean,
there's an American Airlines 75 that comes in, and I looked at that one. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, I mean, we're talking feet, mere feet from the top of hitting the mountain. I mean,
I think a lot of those. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dana.
No, that's it. It's just crazy.
A lot of those videos, though, were from the days before they actually took away some of that hill at the short final of the end of runway, or the beginning portion of runway 2, the end of 20. But still, it's not a fun. It does not look like one of those places that I want to have a pin in my map.
No, nope. I never want to go there.
No, I don't either. Let everybody else have the fun, Dana. Right?
Absolutely. No, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like flying a 737 to Key West. Really?
Yeah.
That runway is what, 4,000, 4,500 feet long? No way. Yeah. I've sat in the jump seat, watched the whole thing going into Key West, and that is just absolutely nuts. It's a really short runway. So, there's some challenging airports that are flown to by commercial airliners, and it's just dangerous. I'm very happy to hear that they've taken down a good part of that mountain to Tegucigalpa.
Yep, me too. All right, and then finally, I threw this in at the last minute. Just recently, a U.S. Air Force T-38C Talon II crashes near Columbus Air Force Base in Mississippi. the crew ejected, and they didn't. They may have sustained some minor injuries. They did take them to a hospital for to evaluate to make sure they were okay. But not much to the story. But the reason why it was important to me is because I went through pilot training and I was an instructor at this base. And not sure what kind of maneuvers they were doing, if they were doing pattern work or if they were up in one of the areas or whatever. But apparently something went wrong, and they both ejected safely from the T-38. So I guess Martin Baker is probably going to put out a couple more ties.
I reckon so. Now, the Black Knights, they say, the 49th Fighter Training Squadron, the Black Knights, would that be the name of an actual squadron that is now a training squadron? Because when I was flying Phantoms way up north, there was a Phantom unit on Iceland called the Black Knights. And
I don't know. I was reading this article too, Nick, and a lot of this I did not recognize because a lot has changed since the 1980s. But apparently they have like a fighter lead-in school, and they also have advanced undergraduate pilot training going on at the same time. The squadron that I was in when I was a student and flew the T-38 was the 50th, which apparently is still there. The 50th, I guess they're calling it now.
The Striking Snakes.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but maybe it's because I'm just old and I don't remember things anymore. But,
Boy,
the other thing, the fighter lead-in, or what are they calling it here? The advanced fighter training. Where is it? I'm trying to find it in the article. The 49th Fighter Training Squadron was not there when I was there. They did that at a separate location, like Luke Air Force Base or something in the Arizona desert. But anyway, pretty cool. Well, not cool actually. Not so great, but at least they successfully ejected, and the seat apparently did its job, and the parachutes worked, and they are still alive, which is good. Unfortunately, one of the T-38Cs are now no longer with us.
Oh, they're 10 a penny, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. Pretty cheap. Actually, this is the model that it looks nothing. I've seen the instrument panel, and it looks nothing like it looked when I flew it. They've completely revamped. That's why they're calling it a T-38C model, where I think they have actually boosted the thrust of the engines a bit, and like it really needed that. And they have put in glass instrumentation and RNAV, like FMCs and all kinds of, I think even HUDs and stuff in it. So much different airplane than when I flew it.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, that's it for the news folder. And now it's time for the best part of the show, which of course is your feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
Would you all like to take a short break?
I just had one while you were coffee barring, thanks. But
oh, you did? Well, I didn't.
I need one.
I'll
Okay.
keep everyone amused while you go another wee.
Please entertain. All right.
Black Knight was a type of missile test on the Isle of Wight. Richard, really? Oh, well, I never. A Black Knight RAF missile. Never knew that. So, Black Knight rocket, British research ballistic missile, developed to test and verify the design of re-entry vehicle for the Blue Streak missile. And for those who weren't at the RF Museum, there was not Blue Streak, Blue Steel. That's what there was. I'm getting confused there. Blue Steel. We looked at a few Blue Steel nuclear missiles, which was pretty impressive. Blue Streak was something else apparently. Yeah, we used to have a rocket. a space program. Didn't go very far. We took a few out to Australia. You're quite right, Richard, and fired some out of Woomera, which I guess would have been a bit like Edwards Air Force Base in the time, hot and remote. Not much there. They didn't even have the lovely Happy Bottom Riding Club to go and relax in, which would have been fun if you'd been in Edwards, I reckon. Or Pancho Barnes.
We're back.
Yeah, that was quick.
Do a plain tale about that, Nick.
Yeah, I did. I know. You going for a pee?
I never hear any of those darn plain tales. That's when I go pee.
Very sensible.
Actually, I did listen to the entire plain tale for this week's show. So I can now safely take a break. Okay. Let's start off with this piece of feedback sent in by Orson. And he writes, at first he sends an image from his phone, apparently. Yeah. And he says, so I was waiting at the railway station for the other half today and looked on my phone to see where she was. And guess where I discovered I was? And then, of course, he sends the screenshot from his telephone. And wow, it's kind of it's kind of disturbing, actually. His current location was in Dana's Passage.
That's a worry. That's a worry.
Yeah, wait.
That's
yeah. That does remind me, though, of the two pictures I've sent you, Jeff.
Yes.
Of me in Jeffrey's Passage.
When did you send those?
Well, it would have been a couple of years ago, around Farnborough time. There is a little alleyway in Guildford that joins the High Street onto North Street, and it's called Jeffrey's Passage. And twice I have tweeted and sent pictures of me pointing at the sign, going, "Look, here I am in Jeffrey's."
That's right. I remember now. And Liz is wondering if it was the front or back passage, Dana.
Yeah, I responded.
Okay.
Yeah, enough of that.
Family show, folks. Family show.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
Thank you, Orson,
you know
for
what?
that.
I wasn't nauseous until about now.
No, you were nauseated.
He hasn't told us what it was like in Dana's Passage.
I no, don't need to know. No.
This might be.
I think only Orson knows.
This might be a good time for.
Ooh, Jeff's pet peeve.
Dana just brought it out. Nauseated and nauseous. If you are nauseous, you're not feeling sick to your stomach. You're making others feel that way. If you are sick to your stomach, you're nauseated. There you go. Another.
Ooh, Jeff's pet peeve.
And moving on.
Moving on.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have a pet peeve sign because my pet peeve is when you play your pet peeve.
Nick's pet.
Yeah. Will you stop playing those pet peeves?
All right. The Flying Kiwi, our friend down under. We have several of our folks are our friends from down under. This is kind of a random thought from Lucas. If you could bottle the smell of burnt Jet A1, I'd go for that. Maybe you could do a signature series, Jet A1 burnt through different engines, ? He's thinking, how about the burnt jet fuel smell from a Mad Dog? We could call that Essence of Mad Dog. Let's see. Another idea that he has is Phantom Pheromone. I'm sorry. Let's see. The Starlifter I flew for the U.S. Air Force. Starlifter stink. That's actually.
Whoa. I don't think you'd sell much of that.
Probably not. And this one, Nick, you might be familiar with Hornet honker?
That's very unfair. The Hornet is not a honker. It smells wonderful.
The beautiful
and
smell.
a lovely mixture of electronics and aviation fuel.
He says, I think it would fly off the shelf. Pun intended, I'm sure.
Ha ha ha.
Thank you, Lucas, for that random thoughts from the Flying Kiwi. Should get a new sound clip for that, too, while we're at it. Okay. Sean writes in fact, I think we were trying to cover this on the last show, but we didn't get to it. He says, some idiots, a.k.a. the media, think they've solved MH370 without any evidence, but hey, they're not concerned about accuracy. And we're not here either, actually. And then he sends a link to this article, MH370 experts, air quotes, think they've finally solved the mystery of the doomed Malaysia Airlines flight. And I'm thinking, really? Wow. What kind of big breakthrough? What evidence do they have now? Apparently they don't really have any, but I'll start reading from this article. All but one of the 239 people on the doomed Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 had probably been unconscious, incapacitated by the sudden depressurization of the Boeing 777, and had no way of knowing they were on an hours-long meandering path to their deaths. Along that path, a panel of aviation experts said Sunday was a brief but telling detour near Penang, Malaysia, the home of Captain Zahari.
I'm just going to wave the first bullshit flag.
Okay, go ahead. Yes, sir.
Okay, if all the passengers are in a depressurized aeroplane, they're only going to be alive for 20 minutes because that's the only length of time the oxygen is going to last. And after 20 minutes, their oxygen runs out, they all dive. So they would have been dead well before they went on their hours-long meandering path. So they wouldn't have incurred their death at the end of that path. The depressurization would have done it.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, Payne Stewart, remember that famous golfer? His aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were long gone before that airplane ever.
And the Helios 737, similar one, where they climbed out without putting the pressurization on, got to cruise altitude, and they all died. And the aircraft carried on with everyone dead except one cabin crew member who got portable oxygen and managed to fight his way into the flight deck. Would be a good plain tale, that one.
That would be a great one. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, on 2 occasions, we're back to the article, whoever was in control of the plane and was probably the only one awake tipped the craft to the left. The experts believed Zahari, the plane's pilot, was taking a final look. Okay, right. That's the chilling theory that the team of analysts assembled by Australia's 60 Minutes have posited about the final hours of MH370. They suspect that the plane's 2014 disappearance and apparent crash were a suicide by the 53-year-old Zahari and a premeditated act of mass murder. But first, the expert said that he believed that he depressurized the plane, knocking out everyone aboard who wasn't wearing an oxygen mask, as Captain Nick just said. That would explain the silence from the plane as it veered wildly off course. No mayday from the craft's radio, no final goodbye texts, no attempted emergency calls that failed to connect. Not sure what kind of connectivity was on board the Malaysia 370 flight at that time. I'm not sure that anybody alive would be able to send any text messages. They probably didn't have Wi-Fi. I'm pretty sure they did not. And what kind of emergency call would you make out in the middle of the ocean?
You don't have service.
Yeah.
I mean, it did go over land and then coast out from Malaysia. So I guess, but your phone won't connect to the ground.
No.
And if the crew were insistent on not making a call, then no one's going to hear.
That's right. Anyway, come to find out that the guy that's kind of proposing this idea and basically saying, I'm 100% sure that this is what happened. Really? And really no evidence to support it, is somebody who is an author of a book.
Yeah, well, that'll be the reason, won't it?
Yeah. So
I'll tell you what's so sad about this, Jeff, is that the family of this dead pilot are having this pressure put on them and suggesting that he was the perpetrator of a mass murder. I think without any evidence, any real evidence whatsoever, that is an appalling assumption to make.
It is.
I think this guy is just profiteering. I think
Yeah,
he is
absolutely.
sacrificing the good name of this person's family, and there is no way in this world until, if ever, this the flight data recorder or parts of the airplane are recovered, and even if they find parts, probably we'll never really know. So this guy is just taking this story and running with it at the expense of an entire family. There's no way in this world he could know. Who's to say it wasn't depressurization, or maybe, God forbid, it was some type of carbon monoxide poisoning that spread through and caught, very slowly caused everybody to pass out. I mean, you just don't know. I mean,
and until we actually find the actual wreckage, the site, and the voice recorder and
we'll never
flight
know.
data recorders, we're not going to know. And it's I don't know. It's self-serving to do this kind of thing. It really is. It's horrible.
Well, it's very easy to point the finger at somebody that's not there to defend themselves.
Right. Absolutely.
And somebody that's wasn't even involved with this at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be like saying, this is just, I'm sorry. It's very irritating to me.
Now, something I learned from this article, if it's actually correct, who knows? The company Ocean Infinity was tasked with kind of making the last effort to try to find the intact 777. That was another thing that I was reading here, that they said that he surmised that it was a controlled landing, ditching into the water because of marks on the flaperon, some of the pieces that they found floating up in various places in the South Pacific. Or I think it was the Indian Ocean. And were, according to this expert, were like in a position that the airplane was in landing position to make these kind of marks. Again, I'm not sure how in the world that he was able to figure that out, but where was I going with this? Oh, Ocean Infinity, the company with the fancy equipment to do the search for the downed MH370, was basically told that they wouldn't be paid unless they actually found the site of the crash, and they were going to be paid like $70 million or something like that. And if they didn't find it, then basically they're not going to get any money. I don't know if that's true or not, but that seems like quite a gamble.
Yeah, I don't know whether they hope to benefit from the exposure of their pretty impressive equipment, and just get some advertising that way. But it's a lot of money they put into trying to find this aircraft.
Yeah.
People said the Titanic would never be found.
Yeah, and they finally did find it. Yeah.
They did find it. So it will be found. It's just a matter of when.
Maybe. There are some, I think during this whole thing, when they were initiating the search, there were a couple of stories of airplanes that had disappeared and had still not been found. Never say never, right? But
well, yeah, I remember the story I told a little while back of the one the Hercules C-130 that was stolen by a mechanic and crashed in the English Channel. They have gone and looked for that, but the problem there is there are so many crashed airplanes in the Channel, they couldn't work out which one would have been the Hercules, because of course during the war aircraft were going down so often in the Channel. And they kept seeing wrecked airplanes, and they were going, "Oh, this is impossible. we don't know which one it is."
Oh, the war! I thought it was maybe from the RAF's pilot training.
No. It was a USAF airplane. I might find out.
All right, enough of that.
Well, there is one very famous airplane that's never been found.
Oh, yes, Emilius.
Yeah,
which?
Yeah, but that's a pretty remote part of the world. That is.
Yeah.
We actually did a little story about someone who reckoned they had a photograph of her after she'd been supposedly captured by the Japanese. Do you remember that, Jeff?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah. I mean, it was a pretty long shot, and it was a pretty fuzzy photograph, but somebody reckoned the Japanese military had captured her, and she was sitting there on the edge of a dock in a photograph. And again, someone else, I think, making money from from this mystery.
And I think they took her to some kind of a prison cell block thing, and they thought they had evidence of that, and some bones buried in a graveyard that seemed to be the kind of bones that a woman her size would have, and that kind of thing. And didn't hear much more about that, did we?
No.
Yeah, that's not true.
Now, I was the first reference to this MH370 murder-suicide theory was in an article sent by Sean, and then I just noticed, thank you, Liz, she included another article 3A that included most of the information that I was trying to scan through as I was talking, and I could not find. But regarding the find or get no fee kind of arrangement that they made with Ocean Infinity, and let's see, what else was I going to say? And then the information about the damage to the parts that were found after the accident, the washed up parts. But anyway, we'll put both of these in the show notes so you can take a look at them as well. Okay. Let's continue with John's question regarding the calculation of the center of gravity. On listening to a podcast a couple of episodes ago, there was a discussion on the center of gravity for an aircraft with the movement of passengers. My question is, what weight do you assign to an average passenger with working out the all-up weights and C of G? I was an aircraft technician in the RAF, therefore I understand weights and center of gravity. I do recall seeing an air crash investigation program where a contributing factor for the accident was the average weight of a passenger, not taking into account the increasing waistlines of the public. For Dr. Steph, I'm a runner and weighing 11 stone, 2 pounds, and he says in U.S. money that's 156 pounds. Therefore, us lightweight should get a larger package allowance. Ooh, really?
That's what she said.
And or airlines could give you an allowance in weight compared to your body mass, or a reduced ticket price. What a good incentive to people to reduce their weight. It ain't gonna happen, sorry.
No.
So I think that Captain Nick, you wanted to answer this.
Oh, I tried to answer it. I have just spent about an hour before we started the program trying to find our company's standard weights, and they've moved them from where I thought they were. Either that or they just haven't included the correct document in my EFB, electronic flight book. But I have done a little bit of looking around. Now, in the USA in 95, now I'm working kilograms here. It was about 95.5 kilos, which is a passenger plus their carry-on plus baggage.
And I think that would be about 200 pounds if I'm not.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. And in 2003, they upped that to 116. In the UK, it's around 88 kilos for a man, 70 for a female, and 35 for a child. Charter flights, that changes slightly less for charter flights. Other airlines have slightly different ones. I noticed that EasyJet use a man of 93 kilos, a lady of 75, and a child of 30. So long as the airline agrees standard weights with the regulating authority, it can vary because it depends on what type of flights you're doing, what the average loads can be, and they can actually vary on different routes. For example, if you're going somewhere where there is notoriously a lot of hand baggage, you would obviously have to take that into account. So it does vary. And of course, some flights, they will actually physically weigh everyone and their bags, just to be absolutely sure. Of course, average weights vary. If you're on a small aircraft, they'll probably be a bit pessimistic. Because obviously the amount of weight you can be have as a overweight situation is much smaller in a small aircraft than it is on a big airliner. You can have quite a few 100 kilos possible error, plus or minus, in a big airliner, and you probably wouldn't notice. But if you had that on a very small aircraft, you really would notice it. So the limits are probably tighter, and you have to err on the safe side on a small aircraft than you would have to on a big aircraft.
Yeah. I was trying to find, I had already always remembered the weights as like 180 pounds for an adult passenger, I think in the summertime, and then 200 in the wintertime, but I don't know if that's right or not either.
That's not correct.
Okay. Do you know what the weights are?
190, 180, 185. I just did the search. It's an FAA change that came out. It used to be 170, 175, but they wanted to account for the weights. So it's the FAA uses 180 pounds for passengers during the summertime and 185 during the wintertime. Now, what is interesting is that includes a carry-on.
Yeah.
So and our standard weight, I think, for the crew, including our bag, is 200 or thereabouts, or 210, I think it is. It's right around there. I used to teach weight and balance at Acme a long time ago.
I can tell you that when we get our weight data record, that if we get like an amended one and they've added a passenger, it's always 200 pounds. The difference in the weight that is sent to us in our data. So I'm not sure if that's just an average or an approximation or what, but and by the way, the kilos that Nick was referring to, I believe the 95 works out to be 209 pounds. And I think he said they bumped it up to 116, and that would make it 255 pounds. So quite significantly more weight for those numbers anyway. Those.
Yeah, I when I was walking around the museum, I was taking a look at the amount of weight you had to dial into the phantom ejector seat, and I used to have to I used to weigh myself with all my gear on, and back then when I was a slim fit young man, I still weighed 260 pounds with all my gear on. The seat only the amount you could dial into the seat only went up to 250.
Oh, good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
That was very interesting, by the way. And just a reminder again to watch that. That's the kind of information, those little tidbits that you're going to see in that wonderful video that Nev video recorded. And that was fascinating. You said, I think, that it was a mechanical linkage to adjust the angle of the rockets on the bottom of the seat.
That's exactly right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very simple, those ejector seats, but they work very well if they're properly maintained.
Go ahead, Dana.
I was going to say, there was that 1900 in Charlotte that went down, crashed into, right next to the hangar. That's when they changed the weights. And also, very interestingly enough, I forgot about this, but they only say that the assumed weight is 25 pounds for checked bag. Now, we all know that every bag that comes on an airplane is very close to that 50-pound weight limit, the maximum, most of them. But, you got to think that the 180 to 185, if you think of all the females and kids, sometimes we have to use child weights to get the aircraft to be legal. But it is actually, on average, a very, very accurate number. They've actually tested this over and over. They had I know this for a fact, going way back when an L-1011 landed in LaGuardia and had a nose wheel collapse upon landing. In LaGuardia, they actually took all the bags off. They took all the passengers off and weighed everybody and everything. And the average weight was very close, within several hundred pounds of the actual weight of what they figured everything out to be. So it's, you look at it, you say 180 to 185 pounds, just have to think of Dr. Steph. I mean, if she,
she's like 220, 230,
230, 240, something like that. So
it's all muscle, though. Muscle weighs a lot.
It's all muscle. So I think my left leg may weigh more than Dr. Steph does. So
I'm just wondering if Steph is still awake wherever she is in the world, and if I'm going to get any kind of response from that last statement I made. I'm kidding, of course, Steph.
So Yeah. So that's where the change came from, is that 1900 that went down in Charlotte, and that's when they reviewed it, went to from 170 and 75 to 180 to 85. So
Yeah, and they do carry out reasonably regular checks just to see if the average weight needs to be changed. It's not like they ignore it until we have a crash and then look at it. It's looked at every few years.
yeah, it is. And you think of when people check bags, you get the big ones that weigh 50 pounds, and then you get the people that get on the airplane, their rollerboards being checked, and they probably weigh 20 pounds. So it really does on average work out in a lot of averages. So it's just not a blind wag at it. Yeah, it works.
The one to be careful of, though, are the charter flights out to the Red Sea, where it's full of scuba divers, and they've all stuck their lead weights in their hand luggage.
No.
So they can,
no.
There's 150 divers, each with about 20 pounds of lead just in their check luggage, plus everything.
Nick.
Now they actually.
I'm a scuba diver, right?
Yeah, I do.
There's nothing. Not casting aspersions at all.
I'm not. No, I'm just saying all those guys go to the Red Sea. Watch out for them.
Also, charters like military charters, they have to use much higher figures because the military people are carrying a lot more gear, a lot of heavy stuff with them.
Yes.
So there are things built in. Things. That's when you can't determine the word you're really looking for. Things that are built into the system to account for that kind of thing. But haven't you just on occasion taken off from somewhere and the nose of the airplane is really a lot heavier than you think, and the airplane is just not performing the way that you think it should based on the conditions, and you wonder to yourself, I wonder if they got the weight right this time. No, it's happened to me a few times.
More importantly, loading.
Yeah.
I've seen a few incident reports where the pilots have said, well, it took significantly longer or a lot more effort to get the aircraft off, and they have done a back check and found out that it was improperly loaded.
Well, and they're again, not to reference YouTube and try to solicit business for them or whatever, but they're not too long ago there was a 747 taken off from the Middle East someplace where it's a 400. And it's terrible to watch. It's a very disturbing video, but you see the 747 just take off, pitch nose high, because all of the load on the aircraft shifted all aft when it took off. It wasn't tied down properly, and the airplane goes in. So
that was at a Bagram.
Yeah, we talked about that just recently, Dana, when that C-130 crashed, and we're wondering if that might have something similar to the national cargo flight that took off of Bagram.
Yeah, it just goes to show you how important weight and balance is and making sure everything's loaded properly. Very, very important.
It certainly does, Ollie. It certainly does. Richard, that's a reference to Laurel and Hardy. No, Ollie? Yeah, Lawrence and Hardy, right? Okay.
Laurel and Hardy. Yeah.
Laurel and Hardy. Lawrence. That's Laurel's more formal name. Richard says, hi, crew. Just a quick one because I know you've talked about it twice now, but I thought I'd tell you about the free seating, weight, and balance situation. I work for a rather large airline which operates many Boeing 737-800s. We used to have a free seating policy, and we had two simple rules. If we were expecting less, I guess he means fewer than 177 passengers, our aircraft has 189 passenger seats, we would simply block off rows 3 and 4 to keep some of the weight off the nose. And if we were expecting fewer than 133 passengers, we would block off block off from 6 rows and the last 4 rows to keep the weight in the center of the cabin. The captain and cabin crew would always have a quick look, make sure that the passengers were distributed around the cabin. If there was a football team all sat near the back and no one at the front, for example, then this would be an obvious problem, and they would be asked to move. Simple. We have assigned seating now. The cabin is split into forward, center, and aft sections, and every now and then the dispatcher would say, as they're completing the load sheet that there's too much weight in the front. Can you move 5 passengers from the front to the middle section for takeoff? And that would sort the problem out.
That'll be popular.
Yeah, but that makes sense. I'm glad that for those airlines that are still free seating, I'm sure they must do the same kind of thing, where they kind of do a quick perusal of where everybody is seated in the cockpit. I mean, not cockpit. Let me try that again. They'll do a quick perusal of where everybody is seated in the cabin and determine whether or not it looks like it's a good distribution or not. That's good, interesting stuff. And finally, if you haven't had enough weight and balance, we're going to do this one too, from Derek, listening to 320 flight episode 323, where you are discussing airplane weight and balance and what Southwest does with moving passengers around. I was flying from Baltimore to Orlando last week, and this became an issue for the Southwest flight at the neighboring gate. They were operating an 800 series of the 737 with only 29 passengers booked. The capacity is 175 passengers in single class seating. So the flight was way undersold. Prior to boarding, the gate agent instructed over the intercom that for weight and balance issues, the captain was requiring all passengers to sit in the first 12 rows. At least in this situation, this is how they handled it. The route for this particular flight was Baltimore to Nashville, so a fairly short flight, 1 hour and 40 minutes flying time, 600 miles. So that's...
I love the way they blame it on the captain. So that if you want to take it out on anyone, then go and speak to that guy with
always our
full
fault,
bars.
man.
Always.
Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't say, for your own safety, we need to get the weight and balance right. It's the captain has insisted.
The captain is being a pisser. Did I use that correctly?
Not really.
Oh, you didn't. Dang it. I didn't think I did. That's why I wanted to ask. Well, he's being a what? He's being a snot.
Yes, that would work. Yes.
Okay.
The back captain's being a bit snotty, and he wants you to all move.
Well, not because there's any reason for it, but he just wants to see you all move.
Absolutely. Yep.
Which brings up, you guys talking kind of all around it, but brings up the very interesting thing called payload optimization, which means no non-revs get on the airplanes. That's really what it means. But yeah, I mean it's the term that Acme uses to try to maximize the amount of fuel the people they can put on and carry as much cargo as they can. So that's a non-rev killer.
I was in my first year at Acme, Dana, and my wife and I flew to Frankfurt for we were going to do a Rhine River cruise, and so we flew into Frankfurt. We took the train to Cologne, Dusseldorf, and it was like a 7-day Rhine River cruise. Really nice, but they give us like a 50% discount for the airline rate. And it was a wonderful cruise. And at the end of it, I think we ended up in Basel, Switzerland, and then we took a train to Geneva, and then the next day back to Munich, and we spent a couple days in Munich, and then we were going to take the flight, the nonstop from Munich to Atlanta to end our wonderful vacation. And we go just walking up to the desk, and the gate agent looks at me, and she says, may I help you? And I said, yep, we're here to, I mean, I'd check the numbers on the telephone. We didn't have the computer to look at load data or seat availability. You had to call a special number and go through a telephone tree that was just painful.
VRU.
Yeah, VRU, thank you. And so I think they said there were like 30, 40 seats available. And I'm thinking, score, this is going to be great. We might even get first class. And so we go waddling up to the gate, and the gate agent has this kind of funny smirk on her face. And she goes, may I help you? And I said, yep, we're here to check in for our non-rev flight back to Atlanta. And she goes, well, of course, you know that Munich's runway is not as long as the runways at Frankfurt. And that this time of year, late October, because of the winds, we routinely turn away non-revenue standby travelers because we cannot carry that much weight on the airplane because to have enough fuel to make it across the pond. And I just must have had a blank stare or something because she knew full well I had no idea. And she said, of course, you have your supervisor's authorization for S3 something or other, or some kind of like passes to fly on a different airline to get to Frankfurt. And I just, again, continued with my blank stare. And then she said, well, lucky for you, I have the authority to issue these passes. I mean, I didn't even know who my supervisor was, as a pilot at Acme. I guess it's our chief pilot office, but I didn't even know who that person was. And I had no idea what she was talking about. So there is an example of payload optimization, Dana, at the time. Now, since then, Munich has extended their runways, and so they can handle, fully loaded airplanes from east to west that time of year. But at the time, the L-1011 couldn't do it. And so we ended up getting our pass to board a 727, Lufthansa 727, from Munich to Frankfurt. And then we were on our way in the very back of the L-1011 in the smoking section back to Atlanta. It was a very pleasant flight.
Yeah, I bet.
Not at all. But
Those
anyway,
are the days when I used to walk up to an airplane and look at the brown streaks under the belly of the aircraft from where the air conditioning vented out and the bleed valves. And it was just nicotine stains around the whole back of the airplane. Horrible.
Yeah, it's pretty sick looking, actually.
Yep.
But so I learned my lesson when it comes to trip planning, that I should do more research. And but I took a lot of things for granted back then. I guess I probably still do, but
yeah. And you should have taken a box of chocolates for the check-in staff.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't think that would have made any difference in this case. But anyway, we made it back, and I was able to fly my next trip, and so I didn't get fired. So happy ending. Okay. Wow. Anything else we want to add to weight and balance and center of gravity and all that kind of stuff?
When I did the weight and balance exam, there's a 75% pass mark, and I got 75%. So let's move on.
That's all you need.
Yes.
Weight and balance exam?
Yeah.
For the ATP?
Let's not go there. Yeah, for the ATP. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Performance A.
They do like 14 separate tests to get their airline transport pilot licenses.
Yeah, we did then. That's for sure.
I think they still do.
2 days. In 2 days.
Yeah.
One of which, of course, was Morse code. That was probably one of the hardest.
So thank goodness we don't do that here in the U.S. Otherwise, a lot of us on this show would not be doing this job.
I never would have made it.
I never would have either. Okay, moving on. Number 8, Bill. Hey, Cap Jeff, I know you used to fly the 727. I've spoken with pilots who love the power to weight ratio of the aircraft and describe it as a hot rod. Do you remember it fondly? Okay, I need to stop here for a second. I have never, ever in my life ever considered the 727 to be a hot rod, and I don't really think that the power to weight ratio of the airplane was that great, honestly.
It's terrible.
It was a great airplane to fly. I mean, a lot of great, the way the hand flying characteristics, manual flying characteristics of the airplane was awesome. But I've always been impressed more with the Mad Dog and its power to weight ratio than I was at the 727. And the 727 had 3 JT8Ds, a different model, lower thrust rating, and the MD88, MD90 is much more power, believe it or not. Anyway, moving on. Also, could you comment on the 727 incident in 1979 involving TWA 841? The final NTSB report indicates the crew probably extended the flaps at cruise altitude. I've heard rumors about the belief that it would provide better performance. Anyway, fascinating story and near disaster. Would appreciate your take as a former 727 jockey. Maybe I'll see you someday at Bradley, BDL1. What is BDL1? I know BDL is Bradley, but do you know, Dana, what BDL1 is?
No clue.
Maybe there's another airport in the Bradley area named BDL1.
No, I think it might be just typing error.
Oh, could be. Yeah, maybe that was an exclamation point.
Yep.
Okay,
Maybe it
sorry.
was.
Yeah, my bad. Thank you, Bill, from Connecticut. And So, just to remind everyone, the flight that he was referring to, TWA Flight 841, this happened in 1979, and they were it was a domestic flight, scheduled passenger flight from John F. Kennedy in New York en route to MSP in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And on April 4th, 1979, at or around 9:48 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, while flying over Saginaw, Michigan, up at the Great Lakes area, the Boeing 727-31 airliner began a sharp, uncommanded roll to the right and subsequently went into a spiral dive. The pilots were able to regain control of the aircraft and made a successful emergency landing at Detroit Metropolitan Airport. You may remember the name of the captain. He has a very distinctive name. Hoot. Actually, it was not his given name. It was his nickname. Captain Gibson. Captain Hoot Gibson. And I guess his first name, Harvey. Captain Harvey Hoot Gibson, First Officer Scott Kennedy, and Flight Engineer Gary Banks. And they, as Bill correctly stated, the National Transportation Safety Board did, in their final report, indicate that they thought it was something that was initiated by the crew in order to extend the flaps to 2 degrees. But on the 727, if you extended the flaps to 2 degrees, you would also extend the slats, the leading edge slats of the airplane. And you don't want to do that at any kind of cruise altitude. And so they surmised that they pulled some kind of a circuit breaker to deactivate the slat actuation, and they extended the flaps to 2% or 2 degrees. And that was supposed to give them the ability to fly a little bit faster, provides a little bit more lift, maybe a little less fuel burn, etc. Now, that was the common knowledge. In fact, when I saw TWA Flight 841, that's what popped into my mind. But do you remember the show where we talked about a book that I'd read by Emilio? Let's see. I want to make sure I get this right. So let me put in something in my browser. He wrote a book about the first ditching of an airliner. It was a DC-9. And let's see here. Scapegoat book 727. Okay. The author is Emilio Corsetti III. He wrote this book, I think, 35 Miles from Shore, which is a great book talking about the ditching and rescue of Antilles something or other ALM Flight 980. And I highly recommended the book. Well, he, a few years later, ended up writing another book called Scapegoat, a flight crew's journey from heroes to villains to redemption. And this book deals exclusively with this TWA Flight 841. And I was just accepting the common knowledge and the results of the NTSB investigation that that's what happened, that while the flight engineer was out of the cockpit returning in-flight meal trays to the flight attendants or whatever, the captain and co-pilot pulled a circuit breaker for the slats, extended the flaps to 2 degrees, and then the flight engineer comes back in, notices that there's a circuit breaker out, and just resets the circuit breaker, closes the circuit breaker, and then of course that extends the slats, and then the airplane just goes crazy, does a 360 degree, like a barrel roll, and then subsequently a spiral dive. It started off at 39,000 feet, and they recovered at 5,000 feet by lowering the landing gear. And the airplane was, received quite a bit of damage, but nobody died. I don't think there were that many injuries on board the aircraft. Anyway, there's a lot more to the story than I knew. It turns out that there was some kind of a petition to rehear and investigate the whole thing, and the NTSB refused but there was some evidence that it was not the fault of the crew, and that they did a wonderful job of saving everybody aboard this flight. And I would tell you, and I'm going to do this myself, I'm going to buy this book, Scapegoat, and read it myself, and then I'll give you a report on it. But it just makes for some interesting discussion about what actually happened here. You know, that was back in the days that we didn't have the internet and Twitter and all kinds of independent sources of information out there. And perhaps if this had occurred during the time we live now, that maybe the investigation would have followed a different path. I don't know. Do you remember this incident?
Yes,
Dana?
I do.
Yeah.
And it's one of the first one I really remember is, you know, the Easton L-1011 in Miami. It's the first incident I remember reading about, and then this is the second one I had ever read about. You know, I was 9 years old then, so not to rub it in or anything, but yeah, I remember that, and it turns out I'd like to read the book too. So when you're done with it, because I'm a pilot, and I'd love for you to share.
Absolutely, I'll do that. Yeah, so just look for it. I'll try to remember to put a link in the show notes for Emilio's book called Scapegoat, A Flight Crew's Journey from Heroes to Villains to Redemption. And he has it available in Kindle, hardcover, audiobook, and some used books as well.
You know, and that's a very good point. You know, this book is, I obviously haven't read it yet, but you know, it's amazing how fast they are to point the finger at the crews. I mean, even look at what happened with the incident in Hudson. I mean, they tried to blame them for not going back to the airport, and it wasn't until so I don't know if it's dramatized or not, but when Captain Sully Sullenberger you know, said, "Hey, listen, you got to put the human factor in there." You know, everybody that was in the simulator immediately churned straight towards the airport because they knew it was coming.
Yeah.
So they could all make it, but he had to process it. It made a really quick decision, and you know, they just try to fry the crew every single time.
Now, interestingly, when, you know, Sully was doing all these media appearances and on some of the big talk shows, late night talk shows and that kind of thing, when he was talking about the movie, so they did a really good job for most of it, but he said that he felt bad for the NTSB because he said that he thinks that they put them in a negative light that they should not have been put in. So I think they kind of dramatized that a little bit too much, in his opinion. But on the other hand, this TWA Flight 841, it seems like this was actually like what we saw in the Sully movie. This is actually kind of the thing that happened with the NTSB investigation. So I thought that was interesting.
And we're seeing the same thing with the poor guy on MH370. I mean, this is exactly, you know, it's easy to point the fingers at the crew or crew members, whether they're alive or dead. I mean, it's what they try to do.
I think one of the things initially that, you know, he talks about from hero to villains to whatever. Initially, they were hailing them as heroes until they found out this fact. And again, this is one of those things where you kind of go, that is a little suspicious. The aircraft was equipped with a Fairchild Industries Model A100 cockpit voice recorder. However, 21 minutes of the 30-minute tape were blank. Tests of the CVR and the aircraft revealed no discrepancies in the CVR's electrical and recording systems. The CVR tape can be erased by means of the bulk erase feature on the CVR control panel located in the cockpit. This feature can be activated only after the aircraft is on the ground with its parking brake engaged. In a deposition taken by the safety board, the captain stated that he usually activates the bulk erase feature on the CVR at the conclusion of each flight to preclude inappropriate use of recorded conversations. However, in this instance, he could not recall having done so. So it did seem a little suspicious. And of course, Dana and I know that we have the ability to manipulate, or not necessarily bulk erase, but we can deactivate the cockpit voice recorder in certain circumstances. But that is not allowed. We're not allowed to do that. That's definitely violation of our rules and regulations. So I can understand why the investigating bodies thought, why would he erase the cockpit voice recorder? Is he trying to cover up something? Did they actually do what they, are accusing them of? But anyway, I'm going to read this book and see what the evidence is regarding the fact that maybe that was just a mechanical error that just, the number 7 slat extended on its own at cruise altitude, and they did everything they could to recover it. So interesting controversy, I guess. Controversy.
Well, may I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Plain Tales.
Plain Tales might be a great thing to do right now because our good Captain Nick is gone again. So, without further ado, we give you the Plain Tales for episode 325, the Luftwaffe pilot and Ye Old Pub.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales, the Luftwaffe Pilot, and the Old Pub. Two pilots from the Second World War meet and drink beers, recounting war stories. It wasn't an unusual thing in years gone by, although nowadays those veterans are sadly becoming thin on the ground. These two pilots flew together in the war, but not as you might think. I've spoken disparagingly in the past about the Nazi regime, but of course, nothing is pure black and white. There were heartless combatants on both sides, but there were also good people. And this is one of those heart-lifting acts of compassion that came as an unexpected gift to a crew in the most desperate of situations. Second Lieutenant Charles Brown was a farm boy from Weston in West Virginia who enlisted during the war and trained as a pilot. He qualified as an aircraft commander, and on the 20th of December 1943, he and his rookie crew were flying their very first mission with the 300th and 79th Bomber Group of the 8th Air Force, stationed at RAF Kimballton in Cambridgeshire. The airfield was near the ancient village of the same name that is home to many old pubs like the George, the Wheat Sheaf, and the Mermaid, some of which have stood since the 14th century. If you are ever out that way and drive the B road between Kimballton and Stowe Longer, you will cross over the remains of the main runway that Charlie Brown took off from on that day. He was flying a B-17F Flying Fortress, which was named Ye Olde Pub, I suspect because of the crew's habit of visiting the local hostelries in their downtime. Charlie Brown was a youngster of 21, and conscious of his youth, he had told his crew that he was 25, but regardless, he was a good and conscientious commander who wanted to do his best for his men. The mission that they were engaged on that day was a notoriously difficult one. They were tasked with bombing the Focke-Wulf 190 aircraft factory at Bremen. Their pre-flight briefing reminded them to be vigilant, as they might encounter dozens of German fighters, and Bremen was surrounded by 250 accurate flak guns. The Oldie Pub was given a formation position nicknamed Purple Heart Corner, a spot on the edge of the formation that was considered particularly vulnerable since the fighters often engaged the edges rather than risking going through the middle of a bomber formation. Running in towards the target at 27,000 feet and in strict formation, so unable to jink or maneuver to avoid either the fighters or the flak, the luck ran out for Charlie Brown and his crew. Anti-aircraft shells hit Ye Olde Pub, shattering the plexiglass nose, destroying their number 2 engine and damaging the number 4, which Charlie had to throttle back to prevent from overspeeding. Unable to keep up with his formation and be protected by the arcs of supporting fire from adjacent aircraft, Ye Pub suffered repeated fighter attacks. Again and again, over a dozen Messerschmitt Me-109s and Focke-Wulf 190s fired at Charlie's aircraft. 20mm cannon shells and 13mm machine gun bullets raking the bomber, and it was testament to the B-17's strength, armor plating, and firepower that they were able to continue with their bomb run. The young aircraft commander lined up his aircraft, and they finally released their bomb load down onto the target. But with the attacks continuing, things were getting desperate. The number 3 engine was also damaged and would only produce around half power. The crew oxygen system was gone, and both the hydraulic and electric systems damaged. Half of the rudder had been shot away, as was the left elevator and most of the tailplane on that side. With the nose cone gone, a bitterly cold gale of air was blowing through the aircraft at minus 60 degrees centigrade. Most of the guns had frozen up and jammed, and many of the crew were wounded. The tail gunner, Eki Road, had been decapitated by a direct hit from a cannon shell. Russian Yelesenko, the waist gunner, was critically wounded in the leg, which would eventually need amputation. Blackie Blackford, the ball turret gunner's feet were frozen when his heated suit short-circuited, and Dick Peachout, the radio operator, had been hit in the eye by a cannon shell. Charlie Brown himself had also joined the list of wounded when he was struck in the shoulder. Their morphine supply had frozen and was useless. The radio and intercom systems were wrecked, and the aircraft, with only one engine providing full power, was peppered with holes and very badly damaged. However, throughout this short and vicious air battle, the gunners brought down one enemy fighter and damaged 2 others before, by a combination of lack of oxygen and the damage to the aircraft, Charlie lost control. Ye Pub turned onto its back and plummeted towards the ground. Circling down in a death spiral, the entire crew lost consciousness. Miraculously, Charlie Brown came round, and with barely enough height left, he pulled the crippled aircraft out of the dive and recovered. There was another pilot in the air at that time. He was an ace Luftwaffe fighter pilot with 27 victories, who had flown over 400 combat missions. Ludwig Franz Stigler was the younger of 2 sons who grew up in a Catholic family. His father had flown in the First World War, and with another veteran pilot, who was then the local priest, he helped set up a gliding school. Franz got his first chance to become a pilot, but his mother wanted him to train as a priest. However, after being caught with the local brewmaster's daughter, it became clear that the world of aviation was his true calling. Stigler earned a degree in aeronautical engineering and then became an airline pilot for Lufthansa before training for the military. His family were vocally opposed to the rise of Hitler. Indeed, at one point, Franz was interviewed by the Gestapo, but soon the country was at war, and Franz did his duty. He flew with some of the best fighter pilots that Germany ever produced. Adolf Galland and Gustav Rodel, who once told him, "You are fighter pilots, first, last, always. If I ever hear of any of you shooting at someone in a parachute, I'll shoot you myself." Back in control of the crippled B-17, Charlie Brown recalled, "I either spiraled or spun and came out of the spin just above the ground. My only conscious memory was of dodging trees, but I had nightmares for years and years about dodging buildings and then trees. I think the Germans thought that we had spun in and crashed." The oldie pub was staggering on at 1,000 feet when Franz Stigler, in his sleek ME 109, spotted him. Stigler needed just one more kill to win his Knight's Cross, so he closed on the lone bomber. However, through the damaged bomber's airframe, Stigler was able to see the injured men. The rear guns hung down, and he had a clear view of the bloody tail gunner's body as he moved up. He told interviewers in 1991 that he was aghast at the amount of damage the bomber had sustained. Its nose cone was missing. It had gaping holes in the fuselage. He could see crew members giving first aid to the wounded, and most of the plane's guns hung limp, unmanned. Stigler was a man of honor who once said, "You follow the rules of war for you, not your enemy. You fight by rules to keep your humanity." Staying in formation with the bomber and convinced the aircraft would never make it back to England. I saw his gunner lying in the back, profusely bleeding, so I couldn't shoot. I tried to get him to land in Germany, and he didn't react at all. So I figured, well, turn him to Sweden, because his airplane was so shot up. I never saw anything flying so shot up. A bewildered Brown stared back through his side window, not believing what he was seeing. He had already counted himself as a casualty numerous times, but this strange German pilot kept gesturing at him. There was no way he was going to land the plane, but the pilot stayed with him until they reached the North Sea. When it was clear that Brown wasn't staying in Germany, Stigler saluted, peeled off, and flew out of Ye Olde Pub's nightmarish day. How Charlie Brown managed to fly the 250 miles across the North Sea and land his plane at RAF Seething, home of the 448th Bomb Group, nobody knew, but he did a magnificent job. As his citation for the Air Force Cross says, displaying the coolness, courage, and airmanship of more senior pilots, he boldly rejected the enemy fighters' attempts at forced landing and directed the struggling aircraft to the North Sea. Whilst attempting this improbable, treacherous return to home station, Lieutenant Brown's command and control was instrumental to the remaining crew's survival. While in the cockpit, he provided the essential engine control, fuel management, and piloting skills necessary to the cockpit team during their hazardous yet miraculous return of the aircraft's perilous crossing of the North Sea back to home station in England. Through his extraordinary heroism, superb airmanship, and aggressiveness in the face of the enemy, Lieutenant Brown reflected the highest credit upon himself and the United States Army Air Corps. At the after-flight debriefing, Charlie Brown and his crew were told not to repeat this to the rest of the unit so as not to build up any positive feelings towards enemy pilots. Brown commented, "Someone decided you can't be human and be flying in a German cockpit." Stigler said nothing of the incident to his commanding officers, knowing that a German pilot who spared the enemy while in combat risked execution. And so you think the story might end, but not so. Charlie flew a total of 29 missions before being offered a position in the Department of State. He served his country as a Foreign Service officer and as a diplomat before founding an environmental research center and being named the National Inventor of the Year in 1987. About this time, he started thinking about that fateful day in 1943. He started having nightmares, but in his dream, there would be no act of mercy. He would awaken just before his bomber crashed. Brown took on a new mission, He tried to find that German pilot whose code of honor had allowed him to live that day. He scoured military archives in the US and England. He attended pilots' reunions and shared his story. He finally placed an ad in a German newsletter for former Luftwaffe pilots, retelling the story and asking if anyone knew the pilot. He had to find that German. Who was he? Why did he save my life? On the 18th of January 1990, Brown received a letter. He opened it and read, "Dear Charles, all these years I wondered what happened to that B-17. Did she make it home? Did her crew survive their wounds? To hear of your survival has filled me with indescribable joy." It was Stigler. Brown wrote in reply, "To say thank you on behalf of my surviving crew members and their families appears totally inadequate." Stigler had survived the war, ending up as an Me-262 jet pilot, but afterwards he found life in Germany difficult. He moved to Canada and worked as an engineer for many years, eventually buying an old Me-108, which he painted in his old Jagerschwader markings and flew at air shows as the bad guy. Both pilots, now retired, were living in North America, and when they met, they hugged and wept and laughed about their encounter, but the deep emotion of the event was never far below the surface. Stigler had lost his brother, his friends, and his country. He was virtually exiled by his countrymen after the war. There were 28,000 pilots who fought for the German Air Force. Only 1,200 survived. The war cost him everything. Charlie Brown was the only good thing to come out of World War II for France. It was the one thing he could be proud of. The meeting helped Brown as well, says his oldest daughter, Dawn. Brown and Stigler became close friends. They shared fishing trips together. They would fly cross-country to each other's homes and take road trips together to share their story at schools and veterans' reunions. Brown's daughter says her father would worry about Stigler's health and constantly check in on him. It wasn't just for show, she says. They really did feel for each other. They talked about once a week. As his friendship with Stigler deepened, something else happened to her father, Dawn says. The nightmares went away. The two men remained close until they passed away within months of each other in 2008. After Charlie Brown's death, the family found a book given to him by Stigler. Inside was an inscription. In 1940, I lost my only brother as a night fighter. On the 20th of December, 4 days before Christmas, I had the chance to save a B-17 from her destruction, a plane so badly damaged, it was a wonder that she was still flying. The pilot, Charlie Brown, is for me as precious as my brother was. Thanks, Charlie. Your brother, Franz. Plain Tales is a featured segment of the Airline Pilot Guy Show Aviation podcast. Find us at airlinepilotguy.com. Well, what did you think of that one, Dana?
I didn't even want to turn the camera back on because I'm sitting here crying. It's an amazing story.
Absolutely.
Absolutely amazing.
The things I like about it particularly, that this guy was a rookie pilot with his crew on his very first mission. And Stigler was an ace, and he only needed one more kill to get the coveted Knight's Cross, which was a really high level of Iron Cross. And yet he had the humanity in him, even during what was for Germany the turning part of the war, when they really were starting to lose, to let this crew go. And that's, I have to respect the man enormously for doing that.
It just shows that people, even in the worst of times, can be decent.
Absolutely.
That we are we can all be human.
Yeah.
So
Now, there were quite a few people who suggested I covered that story. It took me some time to get round to it, for which I apologize. But a fine gentleman called Michel, I hope I pronounced that right, who tweets under the handle Aquila, who first suggested it. So I'm going to attribute that to him, Michel. Thank you very much indeed. First, I kind of dismissed it because I thought it was probably, not necessarily all true. But I went as far as researching it through Snopes. Or is it called Snoops? Snoops, the website that verifies an awful lot of this sort of stuff. And they had tackled the story and looked at various aspects of it to see which were fanciful and which were true. And the vast majority of the story were true, as far as they could tell. And so there were bits of it which I left out because there was a little bit of doubt as to the authenticity, but the vast majority of that was entirely true. And I'm just trying to imagine what young Charlie Brown, 21-year-old, sitting in his wrecked B-17, must have thought when that sleek nose 109 just motored up beside him. I find that incredible.
Yeah, I can't even begin to imagine. I mean, that was just wow. And I the fact that they found each other after the war and became the best of friends.
Isn't that the best bit? I mean, Charlie Brown he went on to have a very successful career. He ran big companies. He was a renowned inventor. He developed some very clever stuff to do with keeping diesel fuel green. And if Jeff was around, he's actually walking the dog right now, he could play Going Green. It would have been a perfect chance. As well as, of course, he retired as, I think, as a lieutenant colonel. He had got the Air Force Cross. Very successful military career and a very successful civil career. For Stiegler, who was a remarkably fine pilot, of course, after the war, he suffered dreadfully. Germany did not. He found it very hard to find his way through the new Germany, and even in Canada, he was just an ordinary engineer. But the fact that they met up again, I think, gave Stiegler a chance to regain some of his pride in being a pilot in the Second World War. He was fighting for the side we consider the wrong side, but he still, when he did fight, he did so honorably, and you've just got to take your hat off to the man.
It's just amazing. You really can't. There's nothing you can say about that other than it spoke for itself. And again, Nick, I mean, it's unbelievable the job that you do in these stories, and that was very, very touching. I mean, that story is probably one of the best ones I've heard.
Oh, thanks. It is a great one. The B-17s, they suffered dreadfully in the war. I mean, they really were. They took an enormous amount of casualties. What is lovely about that story, I didn't make a big thing of it. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it. The only guy that died was the tail gunner who was killed while they were flying the mission. He was killed. But even the guy who had to have his leg amputated survived, and the guy that took a cannon shell to the head, he survived. So Charlie Brown got his whole crew back alive, other than that poor tail gunner obviously you just caught one, and there was nothing they could do. But the fact that the medical supplies, all the morphine was frozen up, they were all suffering from frostbite, they were all suffering from hypoxia, they they all lost consciousness, they very nearly piled in anyway. I mean, it's just, from one respect, you've got to say they were put in a dreadful situation, but then Lady Luck obviously decided that ye olde pub deserved to fly again. I don't know if the aircraft was wrecked when it was repaired when it landed, but I'd like to think it was.
Well, you remember, you may not even remember, but a conversation we had a long time ago about one of my favorite aircraft ever, is the B-17.
That's right.
And we did have that conversation, and it was an amazing aircraft in the Second World War. I think it made a huge difference, and it was a very strong aircraft. So my hats off. Absolutely. My hats off to him flying the aircraft, and the aircraft, saving the day for them, and of course Stigler and being human. So
yeah, very much so. And there's a sweet touch there, the fact that he came from a Catholic family, that he obviously had a deep religious faith. He, other than his fanciful ways with the brewmaster's daughter, which I loved, he might have been a priest. In fact, he was, a priest, helped form that glider school that trained him initially as a youngster to learn to fly. But he and his family carried that faith with them through the war, and his elder brother was very vocal about the Nazis, didn't like them at all. Sadly, he was killed quite early on in the war. He was a night fighter. Yeah.
Well, a very amazing, uplifting story for a change.
Absolutely, yes. I know. I'll soon drag you back down into the depths.
I'm sure you will.
But that was one to wet the cheeks, I think.
Yes.
And I love it. I didn't realize just how good it was going to be until I started reading it and working on it, and then I went, "Geez, this is just one fantastic story."
Yeah, war is such a horrible thing, but when you see little glimpses of humanity in there, that makes you feel good about
it. Does absolutely, humans. Yeah, and lovely also, not lovely, but touching that they die within a few months of each other.
Yeah,
those two old friends as they became.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's move on. Apparently, I skipped one of our items in the feedback folder, and I'll do that one right now. This is sent in from Brian, and he just gave us a YouTube link and one word, enjoy. So I'm going to play just a little snippet of this. You can watch the whole video on the YouTubes. This is College Humor, the channel, and you'll probably recognize.
I love watching this. This was
you'll recognize maybe some of these voices.
Next. Checking in.
You know it.
Go ahead and place any bags or pets on the scale, please.
No problem.
I cannot allow that animal to board the plane.
Oh, no. It's okay. It's okay. She's a circus animal.
She's a dinosaur.
I mean, he needs her for emotional support.
No.
Yes, please. We're not just one of those bogus a-hole couples. I get anxiety. I need her to calm me down.
Oh, word? Because I'm getting anxiety just standing here.
Emotional support. Dinosaur.
I'm getting anxiety just standing here. I love that. That was very good.
And of course, Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, from the what's the name of the movies? The Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool. You should watch the whole thing, and we'll have a link to it in the show notes. Thank you, Brian, for that. We're not one of those a-hole couples.
Yeah, that we are.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, this is really cute. PJ Gustafson, living in the Houston area. We've heard from PJ many times over the years. He's a longtime listener and feedback contributor. And he contacted me about something, and then he sent a link to his YouTube channel. And he said, I took some YouTube of this flight that I took with my neighbor, Grant, and his daughter, Ellie, along with my daughter, Hannah, on a flight, sightseeing flight around Houston. I'm just going to play a little bit of a snippet of the audio just to kind of entice you to go watch the entire YouTube video that we'll put in the show notes. And here we go.
Thing looks good. Feet on the floor. Release the brakes. Full power set. Engine instruments are green. Airspeed coming alive. Coming up on 55 knots.
Cub 615, make a left.
Rotate, there we go.
317 left, clear for takeoff.
615.
Oh, that's easy.
Turn northbound.
It's cool.
What's really cute about it is his neighbor, Grant, is from the UK. He has a nice British accent, I think, if I'm picking it up correctly. But the two little girls in the back, I don't know how old they are, but they make all these great comments that like, "Dad, you're flying the airplane, and this is cool. We're up in the air." It's just, and sometimes he'll go, "Okay, we need to be quiet now. We need to be quiet now." The kids are just enamored with the flying. So very uplifting. So
there's the next generation.
That's right. So check it out. Who knows? Ellie and Hannah may be captain and co-pilot of a flight that you take in the future. You never know. Let's see. Continuing on here with more feedback. Although we're getting pretty close to that 3-hour mark, so we can't do a lot more. Again, I think that we were a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for?
Optimistic?
Optimistic. That's it.
Well, and I was also very long-winded in the intro today as well. So,
that's okay. Some of these we could bang out quite quickly.
Okay, let's try. Let's see. Ralph writes in, do you have a preference for a runway surface? And he says, which runway surface do you prefer, blacktop or concrete? Grooved is better, I would assume. Wet versus dry, summer versus winter. Any other considerations? Keep up the good work. Ralph. Dana, what's your preference?
Yeah. Doesn't really matter to me. A runway is a runway. I mean, as long as it's clean, and of course, I prefer hardtop.
Hardtop, but what about grooved versus ungrooved? I definitely prefer grooved.
Oh yeah, I would. There's no question about it, because and this is actually a topic of conversation, and that's why I'm kind of hesitating, because I was thinking about a conversation I had yesterday with a line check pilot. I assumed for our manuals that because we say the grooved, we use the dry numbers when we're on a grooved runway, but I didn't think of it as being a contaminated runway, because it's like if it's raining out, right, we use the dry numbers for takeoff.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Nick, you have to, I think on your aircraft, you have to use the wet numbers when it's raining out, correct?
Yeah, we use a matrix of runway conditions and use the appropriate matrix braking action.
Yep.
So if it's wet, if it's more than 3 mils, it's wet. If it's less than 3 mils, it's dry. But you do have to take into account the amount of rubber and other things on the surface, whether it's
and that was part of the whole question, because I always thought a wet runway was dry, because that's on our aircraft, our certification, when it was certified, that was the way it was done with the grooved runway. Is that I'd always thought, but that is actually not correct. Took me to the takeoff contamination chart that we have, and even though we use the dry numbers, it's still considered contaminated, even though it's raining on a grooved runway. And I was completely wrong on that, because it's just the exception on the carve out for the 88 and the 90. Every other aircraft at Acme has to use the wet data. So I like grooved runways because they're much safer, less chance of hydroplaning in wet weather, but in dry weather it really doesn't matter either type of a runway.
Yeah.
I must
Nick?
admit, my preference is for the high-tech blacktops because concrete is fine, grooved, but it's not nearly as efficient as a modern blacktop at draining water off. Because a modern blacktop is not like you get on your drive or on a road. The upper surface is porous, semi-porous, and it will actually pull water away from the surface, allow it to flow just below the level of the top of the tar macadam, or whatever the formal name they have for that sort of black surface.
I think they refer to it. I've heard to it referred to as porous friction overlay.
Oh, that sounds that sounds very good. I like that. The porous friction overlay. And it is absolutely brilliant at clearing the runway of standing water and making sure you've got a good surface to land on. So that is definitely my preferred option.
Well, but the only thing I would say on that, though, is that as the temperature rises, doesn't that type of material become a little more soft, like where the airplane will, take a little more.
I'm in England.
It doesn't never get warm.
Yeah, give us a break.
That's true.
No, I mean, the material it will work very well within its design temperature band. You'd have to get it pretty damn hot, I think, to work outside that band. And if if you're in a country where the temperatures are regularly so hot that you need to use a different surface, then I guess you just pour concrete. But I mean, I don't like concrete runways because they've got lots of ridges and edges on them. They're they make a lot of noise when you land on them. I like the smooth touch of rubber on blacktop. It's gorgeous.
Oh, I'm gonna have to cut that one out.
I honestly don't think I ever landed on a blacktop runway at Acme.
Yeah, they're very uncommon. All the places that we go, Nick, they're all concrete. Most of them grooved.
All right.
So
Okay.
we don't know any better.
Do you have under runway heating?
No.
Oh,
No.
do you? Okay.
So I mean, when I'm flying GA, it's mostly blacktop. But one of the things that I've noticed with the here in the States, obviously that's all my experience is we get so warm here that the blacktop would be an issue under such heavy weight. Like I know I've DC, Jeff.
Yeah.
Around the ramp is a lot of blacktop, so you have to use a lot of extra power to taxi because during the summertime it does get soft.
They've had issues in the past. I think they've made some significant efforts to improve that by resurfacing and keeping that from happening. But yeah, you'll actually sometimes sink into the blacktop taxiways, taxiing out, and sometimes even with both engines running. At LaGuardia, it was the same way. There were places where you knew that you wouldn't want to stop because it was going to be hard to get the airplane rolling again because you kind of sink down. And,
I think there's a bunch of different technologies for this type of surface, and a decent it's going to be expensive, but a decent blacktop surface will have a PCN number that is suitable for your aircraft regardless of the temperature. And for those who don't know, PCN is a pavement classification number, and you have an ACN on your aircraft, and that must relate to the capability of the runway you're landing on to withstand the weight of your aircraft. Obviously, it depends on not just the weight, but the number of tires and the pressure of the tires. All those factors come into it. And so long as you've checked your numbers, and then for a big airplane like the 340-600, it's quite an important thing because there's an awful lot of airports we go to where if we tried, or might divert it, say, an emergency diversion where if you landed, you're going to leave grooves all down the runway and you're going to sink up to your axles once you come to a halt, but you get the airplane down. So that's why we would consider using them. Places like Churchill in northern Canada and places like that where it really is an emergency only landing, and you might actually wreck the runway if you did land there. But no, a decent and high-tech blacktop is, I think, is the best runway you can have.
So this PCN and ACN, I don't know the words that are coming from your mouth.
No,
that stuff.
Big jet stuff. Sorry, guys.
Completely foreign to me. All right. Well, Ralph, hopefully that answered your question. Uh-oh. Some bad behaviors, maybe? This passenger on a Frontier flight was led away from the gate in handcuffs last week. Apparently, he was seated in a place on this Frontier flight and was grabbing two different women, and they moved him to a different seat further back in the airplane and advised the lady sitting across the aisle that watch out for him and let us know if he starts to try to grab you. And apparently he decided that the best thing to do in this situation is just to pull out the equipment and urinate into the seat in front of you.
I'm laughing. Yeah. It's not funny. I'm sorry. But I'm laughing because what else do you do when you see someone behaving so appallingly?
Obviously, this person, they said that the man drank 2 double shots of vodka on the flight. Probably more. Maybe he was doing some kind of drugs. Who knows what was going on with this guy? But apparently he was not acting appropriately. Maybe he had took what do they call those pills? Ambien. Maybe he had an Ambien and then decided he would just down it with 2 double shots of vodka. I don't know. But whatever was in his system obviously was making him behave inappropriately. And there's a photo in the story where you can actually see the little stream of urine coming from his lap area and hitting the seat in front of him. Yeah. That's
I love the picture of him being taken away in handcuffs. That policeman is about 3 feet taller than this little man is.
Either that guy was a very, very small man or the police officer is a very large man.
Yeah. Yes, and I also like the quote from the lady identified as Emily. I hear a woman scream, "If this man effing touches me one more time, I'll effing kill him."
And then she says, and I scream when she's watching him peeing, "He's effing peeing. He's peeing. Oh my God." Anyway,
an airplane is not a great place to be in when you're shoved up against your fellow human being, and we all know how stressful it is when you get people behaving like this. It turns what could be quite an acceptable experience, even fun, into something that's appalling.
Yeah, it's not a good place for this kind of behavior. Okay, well, we're just gonna have to wait until next time to hear Captain Nick answer John's question for him regarding Heathrow.
I'm just going to quote Adam.
Well, that's fine. Quote Adam. We'll have to wait for Adam's quote on the next episode. Bo Abrahamson, Dr. Bo, has some audio for us regarding a video and some other good feedback for you. So until then, we're going to put those off, and we're going to conclude with telling you that if you want to learn more about the show, a good place to do it is to head over to the airlinepilotguy.com website, and there you'll find information about the crew, the community, merchandise, the coffee fund. We have APG Live, of course, the ever popular Plane Tales. It's a separate page along with a way that you can get the RSS feed URL to have it come to your podcast playing device and listen to all the wonderfulness of Plane Tales. And you can learn about the way that you can find the apps that we have available for you for free without advertising on the iOS App Store and the Android App Store. I guess it would be the Google Play Store. So check it out. And we have some presence in the social media. And Captain Nick, would you like to enlighten us with that?
Oh, yes, of course. You can find us on Facebook, the normal Facebook address, followed by Airline Pilot Guy. And we're there on Twitter. And you can get us by attaching at APG Crew. And then, of course, we have a presence on Slack.
We do. And Hillel will tell us about that.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share ideas and news. We suggest episode and Playing Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo at airlinepilotguy.com. Or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled HI11E1, Hotel India 11 Echo 1. And see you in Slack.
All right. Thank you, Hillel, for that. And another great thanks to our producer, Liz Piper, for helping us manage all the stuff behind the scenes. We really appreciate you, and look forward to having Steph back with us next episode after she comes back from her wherever she is, and she's going to tell us all about that. And again, if you're still listening, Steph, I doubt she is, but if you are, again, happy birthday wishes from all of us on the crew and the community. And
Absolutely.
Until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
And Micah says, if you pee on a fellow passenger, I think you're in trouble. Bazinga!
Very good. Very good, Micah. Love it.
Oh, we couldn't do it without you, chat room peoples.
Did you say chat room people?
Chat room. Chat room.
Did they
Chat
chat?
room people, yeah.
Or shag room. Oop, that's something entirely different.
Excellent. Well,
Hey,
well
thank you
done,
very
Jeff.
much for vamping for me there. I went upstairs and I surmised the situation. I took appropriate action. I analyzed the situation and maintained domestic tranquility control, and decided that I needed to take Greta out for a walk and also prepare her dinner. And I knew it was going to take longer than the Plain Tales episode, and I told Nick and Dana to go ahead and just keep on talking while I was gone. So you guys did a great job. I think. I don't know. I didn't really hear what you said, but I'm sure it was great.
We were talking about you.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. We were just making fun of you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's what we do.
Oh, hello. Who's this?
Hey,
look at that.
There she is.
Try to see if it would work.
Yeah.
Hi, Steph.
You're still awake.
Well, no, I was asleep for a long time, but then
Oh.
I woke up for Plain Tales, which was very good. So
Excellent. Thank you. How's it going? Happy birthday.
thank you.
Happy birthday
to you.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy
birthday, dear
Stephanie.
Happy
Happy
birthday
to you and many more.
That was cute. Nice. And huge thanks to Micah too. That was
That was very touching.
Yes. He's still in the chat room, Steph.
Oh.
Mike has been touching people.
Yeah, he's been touching people for a long time. What's that, Steph?
I said not quite in the same way as the guy in the last bit of feedback.
Yeah.
Either.
Hopefully not. Are you having fun wherever you are?
Oh yeah, I'm having a great time. So
Excellent.
Awesome.
got away for a little bit of R&R and kind of just recharge. So, but yeah, more details.
Some time by yourself. That sounds like a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it was much needed, and it's been very good. And but yeah, ready to start getting ready to head back here soon. So a couple more days, and then back to the usual work and life and whatever.
Back to life, back to reality.
Exactly.
Well, we can't wait to hear about all your exploits when you get back.
We missed you.
I know, missed you guys too, but I really wasn't entirely sure that this was going to hold out.
Yeah.
The internet, but
I don't
think
blame
anyone
you.
has the internet right now. So
I mean, I can't believe you're getting internet at all in Antarctica. Oops.
Yeah.
I thought it was Greenland.
I thought it was the moon.
yeah, all very likely
Yes.
location. So
Well, considering it's the middle of the night where you are, or thereabouts.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, you're clearly not in the United States.
no.
Nope.
Some good adventures, but yeah.
Well, I can't wait to talk
You're
about
an
it
adventure
on the next show.
Well, and to pop in here at the end with you guys and talk about next week and all that good stuff, so I didn't miss out on that. So.
Okay, great. Let's see. So with that, then let's go ahead and say our thanks to everybody in the chat room. We
Lovely to see everyone there. A lot of the May meetup crew were there. Iva and Iva.
There's a lot of Ivors.
Yeah, there are.
Ivors
Ivors everywhere. Absolutely.
All right. They're just there because they wanted to hear their own voices on the video and audio. All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us again, and look forward to seeing you again next week.
Absolutely. Cheers,
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
If I can find the proper way to stop the broadcast.